Chapter 2251. If nothing goes wrong, Dunzong should be able to make it today. Mo Lien held the little fellow's small hand as the two strolled leisurely along the street. It was really quite cold outside. Because of the light snowfall, there were still traces of snow on the treetops. Mo Lien bent down to straighten the collar of the fire marten fur coat for her and wrapped her cloak tighter around her. It's not cold at all. Arbor looked up at him. However, Prince Mo felt that she was cold. When he held her small hand, he even wrapped a faint fire spirit around her to warm her. Along the way, although the cold wind whistled, the little fellow felt a little hot. She even wanted to take off her cloak. It's cold. Mo Lien reached out to help her tighten her collar and reached out to carry her. I'd better carry you. It's very cold. Arbor's small face reddened slightly as she turned sideways to avoid his embrace. She glared at him from the corner of her eyes. Cold your head. She still felt cold at her cultivation level? You must be joking. Mo Lien blinked. He didn't feel that he was taking advantage of his wife at all. Seeing that she wouldn't let him carry her, he looked at her pitifully and held her small hand. I'm afraid that you'll catch a cold. I'm not cold. Arbor huffed and glared at him from the corner of her eyes. She was already wrapped in a thick fire marten fur cloak. How could she still feel cold? To tell the truth, even if she didn't wrap it up and only wore a thin spring shirt, with her cultivation level, she couldn't possibly feel cold. Prince Mo resentfully retracted his hand. Oh. He secretly looked at his wife. Jojo, what has Second Uncle Master been busy with these 2 days? Second Uncle Master is preparing things to go to the Divine Continent. Mo Lien, that what was there to prepare? After we're done with Ani Prefecture, we still have to return to Shuntian Prefecture and take the little yellow crane with us. Arbor lowered her head in thought as she spoke. Mo Lien didn't comment. It was not a problem for Jojo to bring his family to Shenzhou. The problem was, what did Second Uncle have to prepare? Everyone had an inner world. What did the Divine Land not have? They had to replenish everything here. Second Martial Uncle heard that the prices in the Divine Land were particularly high, so he thought that if there was anything he could buy in Ani Prefecture, he would buy it first. Prince Mo looked confused. Are prices in Shenzhou very high? He didn't think so. Xiao, tell Martial Aunt not to worry about it. When she goes to the Divine Land, I guarantee that she will have nothing to worry about. She won't have to worry about anything. Arbor glanced at him. If Martial Uncle wants to prepare more, then let her be. Mo Lien nodded helplessly. While the two of them were chatting, they suddenly heard screams coming from the street in front of them. Oh my God, this ghost spirit is really fierce. How dare you show up in broad daylight? Taoist priest, be careful. Arbor and Mo Lien looked at each other and hurried over. They parted the crowd to take a look. They saw a familiar-looking Taoist priest flying to and fro in the middle of the crowd, leaping high and low. He held a peachwood sword in his hand and looked like he was going to fight ghosts. At first glance, his face was flushed red, like someone who was constipated. Arbor's mouth twitched silently. She recognized at a glance that this guy was the swindler Taoist priest she saw in Kyoto village. His life was truly a struggle. He had traveled far and wide, causing a ruckus all the way to Ani Prefecture. Arbor looked at this Taoist priest awkwardly in the middle of the crowd, speechless for a moment. It was really a small world that she met this weird Taoist priest again. Chapter 2252. Everyone get out of the way. This ghost spirit is extremely powerful. Don't let it collide with you. The Taoist priest shouted angrily. The bright flying sword in his hand started to spin, as if it had a mind of its own. It fought back and forth with a wisp of black smoke in midair. Everyone stared blankly, clapping their hands and cheering. Arbor was speechless. She had already seen clearly that the Taoist priest was holding a strand of wild silk that ordinary people couldn't see clearly. He was using it to guide and control the flying sword as it danced up and down. From the looks of it, it looked like he was controlling the sword from a distance. He was very capable. After such an awkward performance, even Mo Lien felt that the guy was so embarrassed that she couldn't bear to watch it anymore. Unexpectedly, the Taoist priest actually flew into the air at the last moment, as if he was holding on to the wisp of black smoke. He shouted, Where do you think you're going? Arbor was speechless. She really wanted to kill this Taoist priest who lied all the time. Tut! The Taoist priest spat out saliva and shouted angrily again. He pretended to fall with the wisp of black smoke, and landed heavily on the ground. He wiped away the wisp of black smoke with 2 punches. The onlookers cheered and clapped after seeing such an exciting scene of the Taoist priest taming the ghost spirit. Arbor looked at her dear husband speechlessly. Emolian couldn't help but laugh. He held her little hand and squeezed it. He said softly, "Life isn't easy. Let him be." This was also how other people made a living. Arbor naturally wouldn't rashly expose that person. In any case, this drama queen had been jumping up and down for so long. This kind of physical work should at least be rewarded. But in reality, there really weren't many rewards that the Taoist priest begged for around, and only received 2 spirit coins pitifully. Arbor looked at his expression. He looked like he was about to cry. Clang! Arbor threw 10 spirit coins into the Taoist priest's begging box. The Taoist priest hurriedly turned his head to look. He saw a little girl dressed in red like a dazzling pearl, a ball of the most intense flame, looking at him expressionlessly. If she had some expression, it would be even more perfect. The Taoist priest thought. He rubbed his hands together and chuckled as he approached her. He bowed repeatedly and said, Little girl, is that you? A little girl from Kwoto village." The last time he saw her, it was still on the streets of Shuntian Prefecture. That little girl had such an exquisite and expressionless face, so it was naturally impossible to forget. Arbor glanced at him. "How much foundation do you have in making talismans?" The Taoist said with a bitter face, "I don't have much of a foundation. When I was young, my master taught me for a while. But I don't know if it's because my aptitude is too low, but I can't learn most of it." Arbor shook his head. "You can't learn it because your late master didn't teach you all the talismans he taught you. What you've learned are incomplete talisman techniques. I've met you 3 times since I was young. It can be considered fate." Arbor waved her hand, and a thin book fell into the Taoist's hand. This is a part of the most basic talisman drawing methods for defense talismans, attack talismans, and body immobilization talismans. After you learn it, it shouldn't be much of a problem for you to deal with ordinary mid-level ghost spirits. In the future, you won't have to put on such an awkward act to make a living. The Taoist priest's mind was slightly agitated as he picked up the book and flipped through 2 pages. When he looked up again, he saw that the little stoic and the red-clothed man had walked far away, hand in hand. The Taoist priest hastily chased after them and repeatedly exclaimed, "Miss Master! Many thanks." At this time, the Taoist priest still didn't know what kind of earth-shaking changes this thin book would cause his life to undergo in the future. That I'm not going to sleep until I'm full. Chapter 2253. It seems like it's snowing a little again. Arbor reached out to catch a sparkling snowflake and looked up at Emolian. He held her little hand and took out a green paper umbrella from his inner world with his other hand to cover the 2 of them. He looked down at her and asked with a smile, "Are you cold?" "Not cold at all." Good. My Jojo's body is the best." Emolian squeezed her little hand and stopped in front of a shop. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" Arbor looked up. The shop had a gold-plated signboard that said Talisman Shop, and it was crowded with people inside. The little fellow's interest was piqued. She had always wanted to know what the talisman crafting standards of each realm were like. Back on Seikong Planet, only Mu Jingrui from a talisman patrician family caught her eye when it came to talisman crafting. Forget about the others. The little fellow excitedly walked in front, her little hand tightly holding onto Emolian, who was following behind her. The crown prince slowly caught up. He slowly turned his head and glanced at the street corner. A severe glint flitted through his phoenix eyes. People came and went in the talisman shop. The buyers who passed by Arbor and Emolian, holding an exquisite little box, all had joyful expressions on their faces. Emolian reached out to pull down the little fellow's hat and took off her cloak, revealing a delicate little face. A delicate little face was revealed. It was fair and tender, and a pair of round eyes were looking at him. Phew, she's getting more and more beautiful. He still remembered the first time they met. The 7-year-old child was as skinny as a 5 or 6-year-old bean sprout. Under the nurturing of the sun, this little flower was quietly blooming in a graceful manner, that he caressed her little face and smiled at her with slightly curved phoenix eyes. For a moment, the buyers who came and went in the shop were all attracted by the two's elegant demeanor, until a yellow-grade defensive talisman array. Everyone quickly come over and take a look. A shout came down from the railing on the second floor. The numerous buyers on the first floor raised their heads and looked over, only to see 128 yellow talisman papers arranged in front of the shop assistant, forming a defensive talisman array. This kind of defensive glyph formation can withstand attacks below the 4th level of the spirit realm for at least 5 minutes. This set of defensive array glyphs can be used more than 3 times, until the talisman force completely disappeared. What is everyone hesitating for? The starting price is 8,000 spirit coins, and each increment is 100 spirit coins. If you want to buy it, you can start now. 8,100, 8,200, 8,500. Everyone raised their heads and pointed, whispering to each other. There was obvious excitement on their faces. Arbor was speechless as he looked at the defensive rune array, made of yellow talisman paper. Was this the difference? Most of the talismans on the market were talisman papers. Even ebony talismans were rare. No, it should be said that he had never seen it before. Although jade talismans are rare, I've seen them once or twice. Could it be that the people of this world don't know about ebony when they craft talismans? Arbor felt that it was a bit laughable as he watched them fight over this set of defensive talisman arrays that were of little value. A yellow-grade defensive talisman array, made of 128 yellow talismans, could only defend for 5 minutes? What kind of joke was this? This set of defensive talisman arrays was made by Master Jiang Hong. That's amazing. I heard that the master worked his heart out for 3 months and finally completed the drawing of this set of talisman arrays. Xiaomu only felt like a huge rock was crushing her small head to death. Chapter 2254. 3 months. They only drew a set of defensive glyph arrays, my god. Emo Lien lowered her head to look at the little girl's shocked expression, and couldn't help but want to laugh. What's wrong? They drew a set of defensive glyph arrays in 3 months? She couldn't continue living like this. Jojo, you're so shocked that you're stuttering. Emo Lien's mouth twitched. You didn't eat or drink for 3 months, just to draw a set of defensive glyph arrays. You, how can you talk about making money? You'll starve to death. This is the normal speed of a glyph master. Emo Lien pulled her to her side and rubbed her little hand to comfort her. She gave her a small look. Baby, you must not tell anyone about your glyph crafting speed. She was so afraid that this stupid child would blurt it out. Even if she didn't get beaten to death by the glyph masters, she would inevitably be spat to death. The most frightening thing was that glyph masters were already very few in number, and no one wished for them to be angered to death by others. Miss Qiao's face was expressionless, but her heart was crumbling. Heavens, these people are dawdling. A set of 128 glyph arrays actually took 3 months. If they relied on glyph arrays to kill people, it would really be too late. 10,000 spirit coins. This sir has bid 10,000 spirit coins. Is there a higher bid? 10,000 spirit coins, currently 10,000. Defensive glyph arrays couldn't be sold for too high a price, probably because it had a useless 5-minute defense function. Moreover, it could only be used 3 times. 3,000 spirit coins each time was really not something an ordinary person could afford. Many people retreated when they saw the high price of 10,000 spirit coins. Most of the people gathered there to watch the show, and there were only a few who would actually bid. 20,000. I request to see Grandmaster Jiang Hong. As a gust of cold air forced in, everyone looked back and saw a tall figure wearing a black cloak blocking the sunlight in front of the door. 20,000. The seller's eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, "You must be an instructor of Jiqing Academy's Fire Spirit Department." Noticing his clothes and the flame symbol on his chest, the shop assistant hurriedly smiled fawningly. Is there anyone who bids higher than an instructor of Jiqing Academy? 20,000 once. 20,000 going twice. 20,000. Going thrice. The audience gasped. Excellent Qing Academy was truly powerful. One of the fire spirit instructors could take out 20,000 to buy a defensive glyph array without batting an eye. For ordinary people like them, it would be considered good if they could save up to 4,000 to 5,000 spirit coins in their lifetime. Not to mention 20,000 spirit coins, it was almost impossible. I heard that someone wants to see me. Sun Yang appeared in front of the railing on the second floor. The woman smiled coquettishly and reached out to hold the railing. Are you that charm master? The sturdy man smiled and said, Master, are you interested in joining our academy? All conditions can be discussed with our dean. Oh, is Jia Qing Academy going to establish the #1 talisman master school in the 6 prefectures continent? The instructor of the fire spirit faculty smiled and did not say anything for a few seconds. Then he said, If you are willing to come with me, all your questions will naturally be answered. She's not a master. She's a liar. A commotion broke out at the door. The sound of footsteps was chaotic. A young boy with wounds all over his body, whose face could not be seen, staggered out from the back. You dare to run, brat? Make up for yesterday's edition. Continue at night. Chapter 2255. She's a liar. She's not a talisman master at all. She's a damned liar from head to toe. She didn't draw this talisman array at all. While the young man was yelling with all his might, several burly men chased after him and held his hands down. Get lost! The young man roared and subconsciously threw out 2 intermediate yellow attack talismans into the bodies of the burly men. 2 of the burly men were caught off guard and were hit by the yellow talismans. Their bodies swayed, and they slightly retreated several steps. Damned brat! The eyes of a burly man with a black cloth wrapped around his head flashed, and he pounced at the young man with all his might. You're courting death, brat. You're all accomplices. The short young man angrily roared. This Master Jiang Hong tricked 5 or 6 young talisman masters into going to her private court. She claimed that she had a defensive talisman remnant scroll to share with us, and taught us how to make yellow-ranked defensive talismans for free. In reality, she imprisoned us in that court. We made defensive talismans for free. She took all of the defensive talismans we drew for herself. Ha! Jiang Hong crossed her arms and stood in front of the railing on the second floor. She looked at the young man in tattered clothes with an aloof expression. What kind of joke are you making? Just you? I need you to draw a yellow-ranked defensive talisman array? Ahahaha. Jiang Hong looked at him coldly and said word by word. You're only a small intermediate talisman master. What right do you have to accuse others that you can draw yellow-ranked talismans? Do you think anyone in the world can draw yellow-ranked defensive talismans? Ahahaha. Jiang Hong's tone was frivolous, and she laughed very viciously. The rest of the people heard her reasonable words and nodded one after another. That's right. You can't just go around biting people like that, can you? What proof do you have for your words? The young man was in a sorry state, and his face was bruised. He couldn't help but tightly clench his fists. I'm telling the truth. This woman, she used a secret technique to temporarily raise us. But that secret technique is extremely harmful to our bodies. After a month, all of us will temporarily lose the ability to draw talismans. Yes, I am an intermediate symbol master. But above the 6 prefectures, how many yellow grade symbol masters were there? This woman is also not a yellow grade symbol master. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't help but understand what the young boy was saying. Jiang Hong, on the other hand, was somewhat angry out of humiliation. A trace of anger flashed across her enchanting face. Nonsense. Drag this guy away. If you have the guts, then craft a yellow talisman in front of me. Don't pull me. You evil people will get your retribution. The instructor from Ani Prefecture's Jiaqing Academy couldn't help but frown. Seeing that the young man was about to be dragged out of the door by a few burly men, the young man suddenly stopped. Xiao Mu stretched out her calf and kicked forcefully from behind a burly man. Everyone watched as the man flew out of the door like a ball. The remaining men suddenly turned their heads. When their gazes fell on Arbor, they couldn't help but be startled. Young miss, what are you doing? Before he could finish speaking, He saw the young girl lift her leg and kick another man's leg. Everyone only heard a crisp gotcha sound. Chapter 2256. The iron tower-like man's leg was broken by the little girl's kick. Ew! The man let out a roar and fell to the ground. The little girl glanced at him expressionlessly and frowned. She stretched out her little hand and grabbed at the air, pulling the confused and nervous little boy in front of her. You, what are you doing? The boy looked to be only 13 or 14 years old. His face was bruised. Previously, she couldn't distinguish his face from a distance, and didn't know he was so young. A 13 or 14-year-old intermediate talisman master. Arbor thought this boy had a promising future. Talisman masters mainly relied on their own talisman power to make talismans. The level of talisman power affected the level of the talisman drawn. For example, Arbor could see that at least intermediate talisman power flowed in the boy's body. He was indeed an intermediate talisman master. However, at this moment Arbor looked at the black gas between the boy's eyebrows and couldn't help but frown. Could it be that this Grandmaster Jiang Hong used a forbidden talisman spell to forcibly raise the level of their talisman power? Now that the power of the forbidden talisman had disappeared, the remaining trace was harmful to the body. If it wasn't removed as soon as possible, it would greatly affect the development of their own talisman power in the future. A group of ignorant fools, thinking that someone used a secret technique to help them raise their level? In the end, it was only a talisman spell. Arbor secretly took out a purifying talisman and gently waved it between his fingers. A stream of light, carrying the purifying talisman power, instantly drilled into the boy's forehead and completely swallowed the black gas. The boy was startled. Although he didn't know what had happened, his spiritual sense was clear in an instant. It seemed like there was a bit of talisman power wandering in his body. He suddenly felt it. Hey, what are you waiting for? Arbor tilted his head and looked at the boy. Draw an intermediate defensive talisman for me to see. Jiang Hong was so angry that her face turned green. She pointed at Arbor and said angrily, "What are you waiting for? Drive them out together." Could anyone really behave atrociously in front of her, Jiang Hong? She was a rarely seen yellow-grade great symbol master. He should be respected by everyone, not criticized and cursed. Under Jiang Hong's instructions, several of the shop's employees also fiercely ran towards Arbor's group. However, before he could get close to Arbor, Emolian flicked her finger and shot out a few streams of energy. The few workers rolled on the ground and couldn't get up for a long time. Arbor leisurely looked at the surprised youth. Hey, what are you waiting for? Hurry up. Oh yes. The young boy nodded hurriedly. Then, he turned his gaze and fell on the short table beside the staircase on the first floor. He hurriedly ran a few steps forward to the short table, took the ready-made blank talisman paper and talisman brush, and began to draw with a devout expression. Based on his posture, it was obvious that he knew how to draw talismans. After a quarter of an hour, the store was completely silent. Arbor was speechless as he looked at the young man, who was still concentrating on drawing talismans. Another half an hour passed. That guy actually hadn't finished drawing a simple intermediate defensive talisman. Arbor only felt black lines on his forehead. He was thunderstruck. With his speed, not to mention going out to fight, even if he was given 3 days to prepare, he wouldn't be able to prepare more than a few attack talismans. Chapter 2257. With such a lousy speed, not to mention that Miss Chow wouldn't fancy him, any random person probably wouldn't fancy him either. A round of applause suddenly sounded in the main hall. This little brother is too amazing. He can actually concentrate on drawing talismans in front of us. My heavens, look at how steady this little brother's hands are. I'm guessing that he'll finish drawing talismans in a while. Amazing, his talisman success rate is really high. It's said that it's very rare to succeed in one try. Everyone's praises fell into Arbor's ears, causing her to have a strange expression, not knowing what to say. Wasn't this a very normal talisman drawing? What was there to praise? Emolian lowered his head to look at his little wife's stupefied expression, and couldn't help but secretly find it funny. He raised his hand to squeeze her little hand and whispered into her ear. Jojo thinks that this talisman drawing fellow is pretty good? Arbor nodded. If he's properly groomed in the future, he'll definitely become a capable person. Most importantly, she had never seen a talisman master who could draw talismans properly in all her life. When she grew up in the future, she would also need someone to support her. For example, a group of apothecaries and talisman masters, so that everyone could fight together, right? How tiring it would be for her to do it all by herself. Prince Emo instantly understood the little fellow's meaning. Smiling at her with his phoenix eyes, he nodded and stroked her head. My Jojo is starting to grow quickly. This little fellow had the intention to nurture her own power. How great was that? Miss Chiao's eyes brightened. You also think that it's good to keep this fellow? Prince Emo looked at the youth with disdain and nodded reluctantly. Although he's a rookie, if he's properly groomed, it's not like he can't be used. Arbor nodded her little head and turned to look at the youth, who was still drawing talismans in front of the table. Although this fellow's talisman drawing speed wasn't on the same level as hers, his attitude when drawing talismans was rather strict and serious. He was a talent worth grooming. Arbor, with his two small hands behind his back, trotted all the way to the young boy's side and carefully watched him draw the talisman there. Jiang Hong, who was standing on the second floor, was so angry that she was about to explode. She turned her head and pressured the shopkeeper of the talisman shop. Are you going to allow these people to behave atrociously here? If you don't chase them out, I'll cut off your stock. When the shopkeeper of the talisman shop heard this, he immediately became anxious. How could he let Jiang Hong run out of stock? The defensive talismans and offensive talismans that Jiang Hong made were all high level and above. Even the yellow level talismans were usually sold very well. If he really angered Jiang Hong, she would no longer sell here in the future. That would be a huge loss. Thinking of this, the shopkeeper hurriedly waved his hand and shouted, "Hurry up and kick out those irrelevant people who allowed them to wantonly use my blank talisman paper and talisman brush to draw talismans on the spot. Throw out that brat who doesn't know how high the heavens are." And them. When the shopkeeper pointed at Arbor and Emo Lien, he looked at their outstanding appearances and was clearly stunned. Then he clenched his teeth and steeled his heart. Kick out those troublemakers as well. The shopkeeper gave the order, but the shop assistants didn't move at all. Instead, there were people lying on the ground, groaning and groaning, holding their waists and touching their backs as they rolled back and forth on the ground. The shopkeeper's eyes were about to pop out. This. Chapter 2258. Who the hell was going to kick out who? The shop assistants who could still fight and move were all lying on the ground at this time. Not to mention kicking people out. Even their ability to take care of themselves was questionable. The shopkeeper looked at the shop assistants lying on the ground and secretly cursed. His heart was about to explode. Who was the unluckiest when the shop assistants were injured? Wasn't it him, the shopkeeper? When the time came, he would have to fork out money and effort. If he didn't handle it well, the shop assistants' families might come and make trouble. Just thinking about it gave the shopkeeper a headache. However, he couldn't not provide for Jiang Hong, that great aunt. The shopkeeper hurriedly walked down from the second floor in 3 steps. With a drooling face, he arrived in front of Arbor and Emo Lien. He rubbed his hands and smiled obsequiously. The two of you, how should I address the two of you? Emo Lien proudly raised her head. Arbor naturally wouldn't pay attention to his nonsense. Seeing that the two of them ignored him, the shopkeeper could only continue to smile obsequiously. This small shop only does small business. We can't afford a disturbance. If the two of you aren't sincerely here to buy talismans, please. Slap. Arbor took out a blue talisman and threw it at the old man's face. This was outrageous. This ignorant old man actually dared to drive her husband away. He really ate a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Originally, she only came to watch the fun and didn't want to sell talismans. However, she changed her mind now. What right did this group of people have to be so arrogant in front of her? Wasn't it just a yellow-level defense-breaking talisman array? What was there to be fussy about? Nowadays, she directly used jade talismans to make defensive talisman arrays, not talisman paper. The shopkeeper was dumbfounded as he held the blue defensive talisman fluttering down. His hands couldn't help but slightly tremble. It was a yellow-level talisman. The quality was actually fine. A fine blue talisman. She had guarded this shop for so many years, but rarely had she seen such a rare fine blue talisman. Generally, if a great talisman master made a fine blue talisman, they would first use it for themselves or their family. Why would they take it out to sell? Talisman making was very taxing on one's mind, and the success rate was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Without spending a few days, how could he successfully craft a blue talisman? Auntie, may I know what this blue defensive talisman is for? The shopkeeper's voice was trembling with excitement. Sell. Arbor took out 2 more blue storage talismans and slapped them onto the shopkeeper's face. 2 storage talismans for sale. 10,000 spirit coins for one. There's no upper limit. Let's bid. Emolien grinned as he leaned closer to his wifey. Jojo was awesome. It was obvious that she was standing up for her husband. The talisman store that had been silent for a while suddenly emitted waves of gasps, and everyone was excited to the point of being unable to control themselves. Everyone started screaming at the same time. Storage talisman? Is that really the legendary storage talisman? Oh my god, this is the first time I've seen a storage talisman on the market. Ah, this lady. What girl? She's a master. Ah, right. Master, can you tell us how big the storage space is in this talisman? Everyone stared at the talisman with excitement, and their eyes eagerly looked at Arbor. Arbor said expressionlessly, a yellow-level blue storage talisman can store 30 cubic meters of things, including living things. It can be stored and unloaded 1,000 times. At the same time, everyone revealed a frightened expression. I'm sleeping soundly. I'll wake up early tomorrow to catch up on you guys. Chapter 2259. 30 to 30 cubic meters. And it could store living things? 1,000 uses? This was too much. Such a practical storage glyph naturally made everyone's eyes light up, and they couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. If the defensive glyph formation just now was said to be of little value, then the storage glyph that the little girl had taken out was simply too delightful. The fire spirit instructor from Jiqing Academy also couldn't help but be moved. He stepped forward and said, 11,000, I want a storage glyph. The shopkeeper couldn't help but feel excited as he hurriedly said to Miss Chiao, Little Master, may I ask what the effects of this defensive glyph are? It can withstand the full force attacks of 2 spirit masters below the 7th level for an hour. It can be used more than 10 times. Arbor said faintly. Everyone was immediately dumbfounded. In particular, the fire spirit instructor from Jiqing Academy, who'd just spent a large sum of 20,000 to purchase the defensive glyph formation, couldn't help but feel awkward. He'd forked out a large sum of money and wanted to recruit Master Jiang Hong for the academy, but it couldn't even compare to a single hair on the little master's head. She only had a yellow-ranked defensive glyph, but its effects could last for an hour? And the glyph formation formed from the 128 defensive glyph formations he'd purchased earlier could only hold out for 5 minutes, and it could only withstand attacks from those below the 4th level of the spirit realm. The other person could use it 3 times more than her. This was truly the case. Comparisons were odious, and comparisons were odious. This little girl whose strength was comparable to a glyph master at such a young age was truly too astounding. Arbor flicked a glance at the dumbfounded shopkeeper and roared impatiently, Are you bidding or not? The shopkeeper immediately came back to his senses and nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes. Everyone heard that, right? The starting price of these 3 glyph formations is 10,000 each. Let's all make our bids. The shopkeeper was stuttering, and it was obvious how agitated he was. What didn't disappoint him was that after he'd spoken, everyone indeed began to raise the price in a frenzy. The first bid was for the blue storage glyph. The fire spirit instructor from Jiqing Academy finally managed to snatch one up at a price of 100,000 spirit coins. The fight for the second storage talisman was even more intense. In the end, a wealthy family bought it for 150,000 spirit coins. The defensive talisman was sold for a high price of 90,000. According to the rules, the talisman shop would take a 2% commission. The shopkeeper's income from the commission alone was several thousand spirit coins. Furthermore, after the news of the storage talisman spread, the reputation of this talisman store naturally rose steadily. At this moment, the shopkeeper's expression had completely changed. He gazed amiably at Xiao Mu and asked in a fawning manner, "Little master, may I ask if you are interested in discussing business with me?" Arbor glanced at him and reached out to take the spirit coin card from him, stuffing it into his inner world. "I'm just passing by. Don't think too much." It was just that when they saw this fellow's attitude towards them earlier, they wanted to take him down a notch. "Don't think that I don't have a temper." The shopkeeper's elderly face immediately crumbled, and he followed Xiaomu blindly, repeatedly saying, "Just now, this one was blind and didn't recognize the little master. If the young master is willing to give us a blue storage glyph every 3 months, the price is negotiable. Feel free to ask for whatever treatment you want." Chapter 2260. Arbor held Prince Mo's hand and walked towards the young boy. At this moment, the young boy finally finished drawing a mid-level defensive talisman. Arbor took it and looked at it. She felt that this child's basic skills were a bit good, but his talisman drawing technique was too stiff. His fatal flaw was his speed, which was too slow. In a battle, he had no chance of winning at this speed. Arbor glanced at him. "What's your name?" By now, the young boy already knew that Arbor had just sold storage talismans. He stared at her with eyes full of worship and stammered, "And my name is Zhou Huan." Arbor nodded and asked bluntly, "Your foundation in talisman techniques is pretty good. With proper training, you should be able to become a true yellow-level talisman master. Are you willing to?" Yes. I'm willing. Arbor couldn't help but be speechless. She hadn't finished speaking when the young boy couldn't wait to agree to her request. How could she endure this? Emolian glanced at the child and snorted, "Young boy, where's your modesty?" "Zhou Huan, can modesty be eaten?" Now there was a great opportunity in front of him to learn from a true yellow-level great talisman master. Why wouldn't he agree? "Great master," Zhou Huan stammered. Why you're a yellow-level great talisman master?" Arbor shook her head. A mocking laugh immediately came from the railing on the second floor. "Ha, she's the liar. She casually took out her master's talismans to sell. How could she be a yellow-level talisman master at this age? At most, she's just a mid-level talisman master like you." Zhou Huan stared blankly. Was it like this? Arbor expressionlessly looked at Jiang Hong, who was standing in front of the railing on the second floor. Her face was a bit distorted as she spoke. She calmly said, "I'm indeed not a yellow-level talisman master." Jiang Hong's face showed a trace of a mocking smile. "I'm a black-level talisman master." Jiang Hong's smile froze on her face. She almost reflexively screamed, "Impossible." "What's impossible?" Arbor glanced at her indifferently. "You're not me. How would you know that I don't meet the requirements to be a black grade symbol master?" Zhou Huan's heart leaped with joy. She cried out in surprise, "Master, you're a black grade talisman master." Therefore, the yellow-level talismans that this master took out to sell were just things that she didn't want. Everyone else could make black grade storage talismans now, alright? That yellow-level talisman was basically useless to her. Jiang Hong's face suddenly turned green, red, and white. She felt that her heart was about to be unable to bear it, and started to twitch. She had worked hard for 44 years, but in the end, she had only just stepped into the advanced talisman master proficiency realm. He would need to use talismans that increased talisman power to forcefully make a few yellow-level talismans. However, this little girl in front of him actually boasted shamelessly that she was a black-level symbol master? Ha. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? She was so good at boasting at such a young age. Jiang Hong's expression contained traces of ridicule and harshness. "Will you die if you don't boast?" Jiang Hong sneered. "You say that you're a black-grade great talisman master, but what proof do you have? Unless you can draw a black-grade talisman on the spot, don't boast as if you're above heaven and earth." Chapter 2261. Arbor looked at the girl whose expression changed drastically and said indifferently, I don't need to prove anything to you. The truth was as such. Miss Chiao was merely calmly stating a fact. As for whether others believed it or not, that was completely unrelated to her. She also didn't need to craft a black-grade talisman in front of others, just to prove herself. Stop right there. Seeing the little girl ignoring her like this, Jiang Hong's pretty face flushed red with anger. You don't dare to accept the challenge? Or perhaps you're simply a liar. Jiang Hong sneered and said, seeing that you're still young, I might as well give you a piece of advice. Don't boast too much in front of others in the future, so as to avoid embarrassing yourself. Arbor swept a glance at her and asked expressionlessly, What, you want to challenge me? Jiang Hong was naturally unwilling to challenge an opponent whose strength was unknown. But for some reason, when she saw the girl's stoic face and calm expression, she felt a burst of anger in her heart. And for no reason at all, she felt the anger in her heart rush up for no reason. So what if I challenge you? Jiang Hong said angrily. Do you dare to accept the challenge? Accept the challenge? Arbor shook her head. You don't have the qualifications to challenge me. If you really want to compete, I'll give you a few pointers. Everyone. That Prince Mo, whose hand was held by the little fellow, couldn't help but curl his lips when he heard this. He knew the little fellow's talisman crafting ability, so in his eyes, his Chiao was extremely interesting. However, in Jiang Hong's opinion, Arbor's attitude could simply be described as domineering. Such a young girl actually said that she didn't have the qualifications to challenge her, and even wanted to give her a few pointers. Ha ha ha. Jiang Hong's eyes darkened as she sneered. Fine, fine, fine. I'll give you a chance to give me some pointers. At that time, who knew who would be giving pointers? Arbor glanced at her. Seeing that she was suppressing a trace of anger, she couldn't help but frown and look at her. How do you want to compete? This woman was super strange. She was clearly speaking the truth, but in that woman's ears, it sounded like she was lying. With her talisman crafting ability, why would she need to lie? Arbor was a little angry. He lowered his eyebrows, and when he raised his head again, his eyes were calm and unperturbed. We'll set a time limit of 2 hours. Whoever is the first to craft a yellow rank body securing talisman will be the winner. Too long, Arbor said coldly. What? It's been too long. I don't have that much time to waste on you. You. Jiang Hong was about to explode from anger. She was so angry that she was about to collapse. She glared at Arbor, as if she was looking at an enemy. This attitude was too arrogant. She actually said that making a yellow rank body securing talisman in 2 hours was a time-consuming matter? You're already very lucky to be able to craft a yellow rank body securing talisman within 2 hours, alright? There was a success rate in drawing talismans. Normally, if a person could successfully draw 1 out of 3 talismans, they would be considered to be extremely talented. There were even those who weren't skilled enough. When they were unfamiliar with it, they might only succeed in 2 out of 10. If it was a fine-grade blue talisman. Due to the difference in quality, the success rate was only about 1/10 of the yellow rank talisman. It was so low that it made one's hair stand up in anger. Arbor had a puzzled expression. I read from a book that normal people can draw about 10 fine-grade blue talismans in a day. What he meant was, why is it that when it comes to you, you can only draw 1 yellow rank talisman in 2 hours? Chapter 2262. This was too much of a scam. If you need 2 hours to make a yellow talisman, wouldn't you need a few days to make a blue talisman? Jiang Hong's face flushed red with anger. The expression on her face completely distorted. You! Shameless boasting! She angrily rebuked. Don't tell me you've never read any proper talisman books. Let me ask you, have you ever been tested at the Talisman Master Guild? This Chiao had never even heard of the Talisman Master Guild. After the little fellow grew up, she had never even tested at the Pill House, let alone the Talisman Master Guild. Now that she heard it, it sounded like a fantasy story. She said with a blank expression, Talisman Master Guild? Ha 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 ha. Jiang Hong proudly laughed. Then you still call yourself a black-level Talisman Master? Your black-level Talisman Master title is self-proclaimed right. She pointed at the round badge she wore on her chest. Do you see it? This is the Talisman Master Guild's badge. The Talisman Master Guild uses an attack talisman and a defense talisman as its symbol. My badge has the word yellow on it, which means that I'm a yellow-level talisman master. What about you? Jiang Hong felt that it was somewhat childish for her to be angry with a little girl at her age. But today's matter, she didn't want to let it go. It was too infuriating. She was despised by a young fellow who didn't have a talisman master rank at all, and even said that she wasn't qualified to fight with her. No one would be able to endure such words. She wanted to slap her face in front of everyone. She wanted everyone to see that this little girl in front of her was an out-and-out liar. Arbor looked at her chest suspiciously. Jiang Hong purposely puffed out her chest, revealing the unique round badge in front of everyone. The people in the hall also looked at each other suspiciously, their gazes converging on Arbor. That's right. This Grandmaster Jiang Hong was indeed a yellow-level talisman master. This badge was guaranteed to be genuine. It was produced by the Talisman Master Guild, so it definitely couldn't be wrong. On the contrary, this little girl claimed to be a black-level talisman master, but she didn't have any proof, not even a single badge of the Talisman Master Guild. So much so that you might not even have heard of the three-word symbol Master Guild. Where did this little girl come from? According to the Golden Talisman Jade Tome, an ordinary person could make about 10 blue talismans in a day. Therefore, she felt that being able to draw more than 400 blue talismans in one night was already very outstanding. Could it be that the ordinary person mentioned in the Golden Talisman Jade Tome wasn't an ordinary person, but a talisman master whose talent surpassed others by more than 95%? Less than 8 hours a night. In other words, when Miss Chiao's hand speed was still decent, she could probably draw 100 talismans in 2 hours. This was a very normal speed for her. If she hit on the fish orchid planet, the time flow there was 12 times faster, and she could summon 2 clones to slack off, that the number of talismans drawn in 2 hours would reach a terrifying amount of 4,000. Therefore, Miss Chiao felt that it was better to draw talismans by hand to cultivate one's sentiments. If he wasn't in combat mode, there was no need to summon his doppelgangers. If he were to draw 10 to 20 pieces every day, he would inevitably become rusty in the future. If he freaking finished drawing 10,000 jade talismans in one go, what business would she have in the future? No wonder her husband kept nagging her not to tell others about her talisman crafting speed. Work report. I've finished yesterday's report. See you tonight. Try to be early today. Oh, happy National Day. Chapter 2263. Xiaomu glanced at Jiang Hong, who was seething with anger, and could not figure out what the other party was angry about. Didn't she just say that drawing a yellow talisman in 2 hours was too time-consuming? She probably hit a sore spot in this Master Jiang Hong, didn't she? All right, Arbor nodded reluctantly. 2 hours it is. When the time came, she would quickly draw it, and the winner would be decided after she finished drawing it. There was no need to argue with others now. It was too troublesome to even say a few words. Jiang Hong said with a sullen face. Since it's a competition, we naturally have to bring out some prizes. With that, she took out 24 jade talismans from her sleeve and suddenly injected spiritual energy into them, causing them to light up. Everyone let out an uproar. Jiang Hong ignored everyone's scorching gazes and said indifferently, "This set of 24 jade talismans forms a yellow-ranked defensive talisman array, which is completely different from the talisman paper defensive talisman array from before. It's a jade talisman." Everyone's gazes fell on the jade talisman array, almost burning up. The jade talisman array can be used for a lifetime. As long as this set of jade talisman arrays is not destroyed, you only need to go to the Talisman Master Association and let the talisman masters inject their talisman energy regularly, and it can be used for a long time. When this was said, the whole place was filled with gasps of surprise. The Jiaqing Academy's fire spirit major instructor's gaze also burned. "Is this set of jade talisman arrays for sale? This is my prize," Jiang Hong said with a proud expression. Unexpectedly, Arbor's face was full of disdain, and he waved his little hand forcefully. "No, change the prize. Everyone. Why did they suddenly want to beat this little girl to death? Emolien chuckled softly, his gaze only landing on his little wife. He looked at her with a smile, so focused that it seemed as if time would stop for her. The fire spirit major instructor suddenly took out a pair of fiery red stones from his inner world and waved them in front of Arbor. How about this set of talisman arrays for my pair of dragon tooth souls? Although the dragon tooth soul is a divine level material that can greatly improve the speed of a divine artifact's attack, 2 dragon tooth souls can't do much. Emolien shook his head and said seriously, your overall value is not as good as their jade talisman arrays, it's a loss. Add something else. The instructor of the fire spirit faculty was obviously stunned. Naturally, he didn't expect that there would be someone who knew the ropes here. He really coveted that set of jade talisman arrays. After thinking about it, he could only grit his teeth and say, all right, then I'll add 2 more of these. What do you think? The instructor then took out 2 palm-sized jades that were overflowing with light. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what it was. Emolien raised his eyebrows slightly, his handsome face indifferent as he said, these 2 pieces of broken jade don't look too bad. It's just that I don't know what it is. I'll only know after I use it. I'll reluctantly accept it. When the instructor took out the 2 pieces of jade, he had been paying attention to Emolien's expression. Seeing that his expression didn't change, and his mouth spat out such words, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He had found these 2 items many years ago, when he was training in the depths of the nameless mountain range. The danger level had caused the entire training team to be wiped out except for him. But all these years, these 2 items had always been in his hands, and he couldn't sell them at all. Those who saw these 2 pieces of jade would be mesmerized by their appearance at first. But after the brilliance on the jade quickly faded, no one knew what these 2 items were. So no one had ever taken them. Chapter 2264. The excellent Qing Academy's fire spirit instructor hesitated for a moment, but still couldn't help but ask, you really don't know what this is? Emolien examined it for a while with a face full of confusion. It looks like a high-grade material, but it doesn't look like one when you look at it carefully. Hey, the light on it has faded. Someone beside them couldn't help but cry out. After the light faded, these 2 pieces of jade looked no different from the most ordinary jade on the market. They looked just like goods from a street stall. Everyone shook their heads, pointing at the 2 pieces of jade and whispering. Emolien frowned and asked, are there any other substitutes? These 2 broken stones of yours probably aren't high-grade materials at all. Nonsense. The fire spirit instructor couldn't help but say angrily. These 2 pieces of jade were clearly dug out from the depths of the nameless mountain range. That won't do. You don't even know what these stones are. Emolien shook her head and said, it's too much of a loss to exchange them like this. You have to add something else. The fire spirit instructor couldn't help but feel a bit stifled, but that jade talisman array was really too attractive to him. Gritting his teeth, he could only take out a black stone from his inner world. Then how about this limitless glass stone? Emolien nodded and said with a slight frown, the limitless glass stone is only a heaven-grade material. After polishing it and embedding it into a spirit artifact, it's not bad. It can speed up the absorption of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. But if it's used to forge a divine artifact, it's a bit lacking. Forget it, we'll just exchange it like this. Prince Mo's expression of, you've really gotten off too easy, really made the fire spirit instructor a bit depressed. On the other hand, Jiang Hong, who was standing on the side, couldn't resist laughing out of anger. She eyed Emolien and Xiaomu covetously, and the first thing she said was sharp and sarcastic. It's as if you'll definitely win this wager. They actually immediately took out the prize she took out in front of the original owner, and decided to exchange it with someone else. Wasn't this a joke? This couple. Emolien glanced at Jiang Hong unconcernedly, and said with a confident expression, if you were as good at talisman crafting as my wife, you would also be so confident. Jiang Hong hated that she couldn't open her mouth, and cursed this couple to death. Both of them were so hateful. However, while Jiang Hong was fuming, someone with a keen sense of smell was already staring at Prince Mo with burning gazes. This little big brother. opening his mouth and saying that he's so knowledgeable about artifact refinement. One look, and I can tell he's an understanding person. T.S. Some people wanted to make a move. They wanted to go to the couple's side. They wanted to get close to the couple. Rights, or their, T.S. S long. T's a moment. T have a's. Teat. S anyway, it won't take much time. It's really troublesome to go up and down the stairs. Arbor's disdainful attitude completely angered Jiang Hong. Blood rushed to her head, and she furiously stormed down the first floor's lobby. She opened her hand and said to the surrounding buyers who were watching the show, "Everyone, today I, Jiang Hong, am here with this little Grand Master. Please be my witness for the competition." Jiang Hong purposely emphasized the little master. Even a fool could feel the sarcasm in her tone. Chapter 2265. The young master, Miss Chiao, stood in front of Jiang Hong with her hands clasped behind her back. She expressionlessly looked at the angry woman. "Allow me to be the judge for the two of you." At this moment, an old man with white hair and a beard walked forward with a smile and cupped his hands in salute. "Oh, isn't this the famous Elder Song of Ani Prefecture?" Yes. Elder Song is over 70 years old, but his talisman crafting skills are second to none in our Ani Prefecture. I heard that Elder Song is already a peak black level talisman master. He's only a small step away from breaking through to talisman master? Earth level? Yes, he's about to break through to earth level. Everyone looked at the old talisman master with reverence. The old man was also very benevolent. He nodded to everyone who saluted him with a kind smile. When Jiang Hong saw the old talisman master, she didn't dare to act rashly. She respectfully saluted the old talisman master. "Thank you for your trouble, Elder Song." Xiaomu thanked him, and then sat down at two small tables with Jiang Hong, one on the left and one on the right. Talisman masters brought their own talisman brushes and cinnabar. Arbor and Jiang Hong were no exception. They each took out their own talisman brushes, picked up a piece of talisman paper from the table, and started to draw. In order to appear less special, Arbor specially prepared a cinnabar and pretended to dip it in. In fact, her talisman brushes never needed cinnabar. When the talisman drawing began, everyone held their breaths and looked at the two talisman masters in front of them with shining eyes. Jiang Hong was over 40 years old and had drawn countless talismans. There was no doubt about her proficiency in talisman drawing. However, the red-clothed little girl sitting on the left was even more extraordinary. She was so young, but she was calm from beginning to end. She didn't even care that she was drawing talismans in front of everyone. When she picked up the talisman brush to draw talismans, her hand speed was so smooth that it was done in one stroke. Everyone stared blankly at the young master as she put away her talisman brush. They looked at each other and saw the stupefied expression on each other's faces. What was going on? Is the little master done drawing? From the moment the young master sat down to the moment he started writing, to the moment he finished writing, did it even take 3 minutes? For Arbor, there was no need to pay attention to the quality of the talisman. The material was neither jade talisman nor ebony talisman. It was just a paper talisman. How much time could it take? She had already dipped the brush in cinnabar and rubbed it for a while. Once she moved the talisman brush, needless to say, even she herself couldn't control her speed. From the moment he started drawing the talisman to the moment he finished, it probably didn't even take a minute. Old Talisman Master Song was also completely stunned on the spot. He hurriedly walked over shakily and picked up the yellow level body securing talisman that Arbor had drawn. After carefully examining it, he excitedly cried out, "Yellow level! One body securing talisman!" Hua! The whole place was in an uproar. On the other side, Jiang Hong, who had just sat down, dipped the brush in cinnabar and started to draw the first rune line, clenched the hand holding the brush tightly. She raised her head with a twisted expression and exclaimed, "Impossible! How is this possible?" Emma Lien could not help but put her hand to her forehead. See, this matter was guaranteed to blow up. In less than half a day, it was estimated that the entire Ani Prefecture would spread the news that a great talisman master with a hand speed of 3 minutes, had appeared out of nowhere. Arbor had already stood up and glanced indifferently in Jiang Hong's direction. I won. Put up your prize. Chapter 2266. This person was probably rushing to give her some good luck. Impossible. Jiang Hong shrieked. For a moment, her voice drowned out the excited shouts of everyone in the hall, causing the air to quieten down. Jiang Hong rushed in front of the old talisman master in 3 steps, and snatched the yellow-level body-securing talisman from his hands. She raised it high and roared, Everyone, you have to take a good look. Look carefully. In my 44 years, I've never seen a talisman master who could create a yellow-level immobilization talisman in 3 minutes. Everyone, use your brain and think carefully. Is this possible or not? Jiang Hong said harshly, looking like she wanted to wake everyone up. She yelled at the top of her lungs. She clearly cheated. She cheated. Jiang Hong shouted. She definitely drew a talisman in advance and stuffed it in her sleeve to replace it. Xiaomu looked at her blankly, and it was quite a while before she said, So many people are watching me draw talismans. How am I supposed to put on the talismans in my sleeve, under everyone's watchful eyes? Don't tell me you're joking? Jiang Hong looked at her coldly. Don't pretend. Everyone can search her sleeve. There's definitely a lot of immobilization talismans and defensive talismans hidden inside. Impudent. When Crown Prince Emo saw that there really were people approaching Xiaomu wretchedly to conduct a body search, he angrily rebuked them and sent those 2 men harboring malicious intentions flying with a flick of his sleeve. Arbor raised her hand to stroke him to comfort him. She looked at Jiang Hong very calmly and said, Just because you can't do it in this lifetime doesn't mean others can't. The young Zhou heard this and nodded vigorously. That's right. Just now I didn't even blink. I was staring at the young master and watching her create talismans. She simply completed it in one go from starting to finishing. She didn't pause at all. She didn't even pull out her sleeve. You're clearly slandering her. You're jealous of her speed in creating talismans, so you're framing her for cheating. Zhou Huan's words were orderly and reasonable. Not only did the surrounding people agree, even the referee, old talisman master Song, couldn't help but nod. Zhou Huan looked very excited. In his 14 years of life, he'd really never seen someone who could actually draw talismans so smoothly, and without the slightest pause. As expected, this black-grade great talisman master was extremely formidable. He, Zhou Huan, must learn from her. After making up her mind, Zhou Huan did not take advantage of the chaos to speak. She just stood beside Emolien and Arbor and angrily reprimanded Jiang Hong. Look at this. Arbor took out a blank talisman and waved it in front of her. He took out a talisman pen and stood there casually writing and drawing a few times. This time, it really didn't even take 3 minutes before a yellow rank body securing talisman appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The old talisman master excitedly took it over and looked at it over and over, as if he had found a treasure. He shouted, Yellow grade, body securing talisman. Jiang Hong's eyes widened instantly. She felt that her head was probably going to smoke. Her entire person was somewhat delirious, as she froze on the spot. She could only keep shouting, Impossible, this is impossible. Jiang Hong felt that she was about to go crazy. This time, she had personally witnessed the little girl draw a yellow rank body securing talisman in a matter of minutes. Her brush strokes were as smooth as the clouds and her free and easy appearance made her feel as if a venomous snake had coiled up in her heart, making her extremely jealous. She could only mutter the word impossible. Chapter 2267. No way, no way, no way. How could this young lady have such an abnormal speed to complete a yellow-grade body-securing talisman? Her gaze fell on her hand, and she shrieked in shock. Her brush. Talisman brush. There's something wrong with the talisman brush. This talisman brush can definitely speed up the rate of talisman formation. Arbor had already stored the talisman brush into his inner world. Hearing that, he raised his head and glanced at her indifferently. What a joke, before the competition. You didn't say that good equipment can't participate in the competition. Jiang Hong only felt waves of dizziness in her head, and she looked like she was about to faint. Why you cheated? Your talisman brush is cheating. Is there something wrong with your head? Arbor swept a glance at her. Good equipment is cheating? Don't talk nonsense with me. The prize is here, you can scram now. After a series of nagging, Miss Chiao was already very impatient. She scolded him and gave the shopkeeper a look. The latter immediately understood and went forward to pick up the jade talisman array brocade box that Jiang Hong put aside and quickly walked to Arbor's side. When Arbor reached out to take it, Jiang Hong pounced on him like a madwoman, muttering, No way. You can't take my jade talisman array. I won't use this jade talisman array as a prize. Scram! Arbor was instantly enraged, and he kicked the madly pouncing Jiang Hong out. Jiang Hong rolled twice on the ground, and her head knocked against a nearby cabinet. She lay there miserably, pounding the ground as she roared. Slut, you dare to steal my jade talisman array. My Jiang family won't let you off. I'll even report to the Talisman Master Association and tell the president about your various misdeeds. Before she could finish her sentence, her entire person was swept out of the door by a speeding line of fire. Jiang Hong landed heavily on the ground outside. Her internal organs jolted, and she spat out a mouthful of old blood. Who knew if it was because she was swept by Mo Lien, or because she was so angry that she spat out blood? Mo Lien disdainfully swept a glance at the woman who was thrown out of the door by her fire spirit, and shook her head. You're already so old, yet you still don't understand the principle of accepting defeat. How stupid and petty. As for her, she thought she would win, but she didn't expect to lose it so easily. She's just not convinced. Just ignore her. No one had the guts to not admit defeat after losing to a lady. Arbor pursed his small lips and took the brocade box over. He turned his head to look at the fire spirit instructor of Jiaqing Academy, who was beaming with joy. Here. Thank you. The fire spirit instructor smiled as he handed over the 2 pieces of dragon tooth soul, the nameless jade, and the limitless glass stone that he had prepared earlier to Arbor. Arbor nodded and handed the items to Mo Lien. Then, he turned around and prepared to leave with Mo Lien. Old Talisman Master Song hurriedly stopped her and asked with a smile, Little Master, please stay. I wonder if Little Grandmaster has joined the Symbol Master Guild? Although our Ani Prefecture's Talisman Master Guild is only a small branch. However, as long as you join the Talisman Master Guild, you can systematically learn talisman techniques. This is a rare and precious opportunity. Moreover, after joining the Talisman Master Guild, you can buy blank talisman papers at talisman shops with a discount. If you're interested, Little Master. Arbor raised her hand and waved it. Not for the time being. Thank you for your kindness. A group of people swarmed up and surrounded the young couple. Everyone was talking at once. Chapter 2268. Some asked Little Master when he would come back to sell talismans again. Some asked if the young master beside him was a spirit weapon master. Some asked if he could make a weapon for him, and so on. Arbor's head hurt from all the chatter. Zhou Huan, who finally squeezed to the side of the 2, cried out excitedly. Master. What we said before. What I said about following you. Is it still in effect? This lowly one is willing to follow Master. Master, please give me some pointers. Do you still have companions in that woman's private court? Let's get them out together later. Arbor waved his hand at him. Go out first, I'll find you later. The 2 were surrounded by a group of people. Mo Lien hastily pulled her into his embrace to protect her, fending off the swarming crowd. Master, when will you come back to sell storage talismans? Master, I'm willing to buy another storage talisman at a high price. Please promise me. Young master, are you a spirit weapon master? What you said makes sense. Can you make a weapon for this lowly one? I'm willing to pay a high price. Master. Young master. Mo Lien, this fellow's movements were extremely swift. While everyone was clamoring, he picked up his wifey and leaped onto the roof in quick strides. After a few leaps, he left behind a handsome and otherworldly back view to the clamoring crowd, that everyone looked in the direction they left, wringing their hands and calling out, Young master, please wait. Master. When will you come back to sell your storage talisman? This person must be a spirit weapon master. Everyone sighed and looked up at the direction of the two people on the roof. One by one they lowered their heads. Arbor was carried around by Emolian, then turned back to find the young boy, Zhou. When Zhou saw that they had indeed come to find her, she immediately grinned from ear to ear. Her small face was filled with joy. Great master, you really have to come to find me? Come to this mansion tonight to find me. We'll go save your companions together. Okay. Zhou nodded excitedly. Anyway, the house was only locked up, so it shouldn't be too dangerous. That woman Jiang Hong had been beaten to the ground. For the time being, she would not be able to cause any trouble. After Arbor bid farewell to the young boy, he returned to his small residence with Emolian. As soon as he entered the room, the little guy turned around and started to dig at Emolian. Lian, what are those two nameless jade stones? It must be something good, right? Seeing Emolian raise her eyebrows, Arbor knew that the two nameless stones must be very rare objects. Looking at how he was seriously tricking that fire spirit major instructor from Jiaqing Academy, the little fellow couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Emolian lowered his head and glanced at her. He lifted her up and kissed her. Do you want to know? Then kiss me. Xiaomu glanced around with a guilty conscience before hastily stamping his face with her lipstick. Hurry and speak. Perfunctory little fellow, this kiss was a bit of a stopgap. Although the crown prince was not satisfied, he still took out the two ordinary-looking jade stones with a flip of his hand. He pulled her little hand and placed it on one of them. Try to send a bit of your spiritual awareness in. Whoosh! One of the jade stones suddenly exploded with a fiery red glow of spiritual power. A ball of flame directly rushed up from the stone, instantly enveloping the two of them. Chapter 2269. This is Heavenly Fire Mithril, an extremely rare saint-grade forging material. Emolian smiled as he whispered into her ear. Jojo, what are we going to do? You're rich. Sure enough, when the little fellow heard the word rich, her eyes lit up slightly. Originally, I had been looking for a material that could upgrade the feral to a divine weapon for you. This Heavenly Fire Mithril really exceeded my expectations. It's pretty good. Arbor understood. She hugged his slender neck and asked happily, My MOMO can be upgraded, right? Emolian nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But can we give it another name? We can call it Heavenly Fire Ruler in the future. MOMO. If he wasn't careful, Emolian would think that she was calling him. MOMO is so affectionate. The little fellow blinked and said. Emolian pressed down on the back of her little head and suddenly covered her little mouth. Miss Chiao was caught off guard. She only felt a touch of gentleness covering her and kissing her. For some reason, she almost couldn't control her heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. She could almost clearly hear her own drumming heartbeat, as if it was going to jump out of her chest. This guy actually launched a surprise attack. Miss Chiao bit him hard. The man chuckled softly and murmured, Jojo, it hurts. Then, he deepened the sudden kiss. Arbor felt as if the depths of her soul were being pulled by something, and she was about to sink into it bit by bit. She opened her eyes and looked at his blurred eyes that were so close to her. Her heart skipped a beat. This person's phoenix eyes were too beautiful. There seemed to be broken starlight in them. When he looked at her in a daze, it was as if he wanted to pull her in bit by bit. A strand of his black hair flowed down, fluttering by her ear. She only heard him murmuring beside her lips, I'm punishing you for being perfunctory just now. If you're disobedient, you have to be punished. Miss Chiao blinked. Suddenly, she exerted force with her hand and pulled him down. Not to be outdone, she kissed him forcefully with a fierce look on her face. Prince Emo chuckled. With a flick of his sleeve, he picked her up. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already sat down by the bed. Arbor tilted his head and looked at him. His little hands struggled hard, but he couldn't break free. Don't even think about running. The man hugged her and sat her on his lap. He stretched out his arms and hugged her slender waist. He rubbed her hair. You want to run away after kissing me? No way. Who ran away? His little face was so hot that it was about to boil. But the little guy still had a stubborn look on his face as he raised his chin and shouted. What? You don't want to admit it? He said with a smile. His fingers twirled a strand of hair by her cheek, and he whispered into her ear. If I didn't catch you just now, you would have run away by now. Do you think I don't understand your personality of running away after flirting? Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. She tried her best to keep a straight face as she turned back to look at him expressionlessly. But when she met his half-smile, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She angrily punched him. You've gotten yourself into trouble. You've offended the little emperor. The smile in the crown prince's eyes deepened. He hugged her and shook her. Okay. I won't tease you anymore. Look, these 2 pieces of heavenly fire secret silver are quite big. After you finish making your ruler, there should be some left. When the time comes, this husband will help you improve to bow. Chapter 2270. Miss Chiao reached out and touched the 2 ice-cold stones. She stroked them with her small hand and transmitted a wisp of spiritual awareness. She watched as a layer of fire appeared on the stones, instantly enveloping the 2 of them in a fire barrier. Why would such a change happen when I transmitted a wisp of spiritual awareness? Do you know of a secret cultivation method in the upper 3 provinces? Some large clans use coiling dragon stones to test their children's aptitude when they are born. They select extremely talented disciples and let them cultivate freely in the early stages to nurture their spirit meridians and accumulate strength. When they reach adulthood, they use a secret method to directly help them advance to the entry level of the God realm. In the future, their cultivation speed will be much faster than ordinary people. Emolienne pulled down her small hand and rubbed it in her own. As everyone knows, only those who comprehend a trace of the origin power of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth can successfully advance to the spiritual realm. On our Seacombe planet, it's precisely because the spiritual energy is weak and unable to comprehend the power of the 5 spirits that a large number of people are prevented from advancing to the spiritual realm. Arbor nodded, thinking inwardly. When I gain a firm foothold in the divine continent, I'll bring Shaolin and the others over. Her younger brother and sister's aptitudes are quite good. Wouldn't it be a waste of talent to leave them on Seacombe planet? This secret method must be carried out in conjunction with the 5 spirits' secret silver. That's it. Arbor looked surprised. Her small mouth opened slightly, and a thought flashed through her mind. Oh, I understand. Those who use the secret method to advance use this kind of heavenly fire secret silver to replace the comprehension of the 5 spirits' origin power, right? Emolienne nodded, smiling as she lowered her head and lightly pecked her small mouth. Because they themselves have skipped the spiritual realm, but the comprehension of the 5 spirits is indispensable. If they want to quickly proceed with the comprehension of the 5 spirits, they have to take a shortcut. The aristocratic families of the upper 3 provinces are just this rich and overbearing. Actually, this kind of stone is very useful when added to divine artifacts or even sacred artifacts. It's too low-end to just use it to replace the comprehension of the 5 spirits. After all, in my opinion, people who can't even comprehend the 5 spirits' origin power can't be considered to have good aptitudes. Emolienne's eyes were indifferent, and her tone was slightly mocking. Good aptitude from birth? But it doesn't mean that their aptitudes are still good in the next 10 years or so. Idiots will always be idiots. He smiled and lowered his head to look at Arbor. His gaze was very gentle. Unlike my Jojo, who was able to sense the origins of the 5 spirits in the lower realm. He even sensed the holy water, holy wood and holy earth. Arbor was a little excited by her praise, but he was still a little embarrassed. Actually, the holy water was a legacy item of the sect, so it was best not to mention it for now. That Holywood, this thing, she still didn't know why it had been in her body since she was young. As for the Holy Land, it was quite funny. It had come knocking on his door. Jojo, why are you so smart? Emolienne leaned closer to her and rubbed her cheeks with a smile. Arbor blushed at his compliment. Actually, it's not that great. Nonsense, it's amazing. Emolienne reached out and threw the 2 pieces of mithril into her inner world. She stretched out her hand and said, Give me the ferrule and debeo first. This time, the forging will take about half a month. Is there any problem? Arbor shook her head. What problem could there be? Anyway, she had her husband by her side. She didn't even need to fight by herself. Okay, then leave it with me for a while. Ah, my beautiful little master. Do you have any orders for me? The little golem jumped out and flattered as usual. Emolien put away the ferrule that Arbor handed over, and also put away the muttering golem debeo. Chapter 2271. Can you make debeo stop being so noisy after the modification? That won't do. Being noisy is his specialty. Emolien smiled and tapped her forehead lightly. Imitating debeo's tone, he said, Ah, my beautiful little master. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. She was 200% sure that Emolien had taught him that. Emolien smiled and hugged her waist tightly. Jojo, this heavenly fire ruler will grow into a divine weapon in the future. You and the ruler have always been telepathically connected. During battle, you can merge it into your body and become one with it. Emolien paused and said, When the time comes, you will be able to use the fire spirit on this piece of heavenly fire secret silver. I checked just now. After the ruler merges with this heavenly fire secret silver, it should be able to produce a spiritual fire of 7th level and above. Arbor was really energized now. She turned her little face to look at him and said, You mean, as long as I merge the weapon into my body, I will be able to control this 7th level spiritual fire? Emolien nodded. Yes. Heavens, she could merge the weapon into her body and use the spiritual fire. When Arbor heard this, she immediately revealed an excited expression. The biggest difference between a divine weapon and a spiritual weapon is that after the user and the weapon become one, the divine weapon will be more effective. But merging the weapon isn't that easy. Emolien looked at her with a smile. But I believe that Jojo will be fine. What happens if the merging fails? The user will be injured, and the divine weapon will be destroyed. Arbor was stunned. It has such a big impact. Emolien nodded. Divine weapons all have their own senses. If it is unwilling to become one with the weapon, it will explode on its own in most cases, harming others and itself. But Jojo doesn't need to worry at all. You and the ruler have been together for so many years, your hearts are already connected. There is no chance of it exploding on its own if it injures you. Arbor nodded her little head. She naturally knew that her Momo was the best. This level 7 spiritual fire cannot be mentioned in the same breath as your holy water and holy wood. Its level is indeed a little low. When we find heavenly fire mithril that is of a higher level, I will reforge it for you, and you will be able to upgrade your fire spirit. Arbor, on the other hand, was very satisfied. She was a person who couldn't comprehend the power of the fire spirit. Being able to use the 7th rank fire spirit through the man-weapon unite was already a stroke of luck. How could she be picky? Alright, go to bed early. I'll go and forge it for you tomorrow morning. Emolien hugged her and reached out to undo her belt. The little fellow immediately jumped down from his lap and ran into the inner room. He couldn't help but stutter. I took a bath. Don't follow me. Emolien sat on the edge of the bed obediently. Jojo, do you want some hot water? That night, Zohuan came to meet the two of them as scheduled. After a few words, Arbor summoned Qing Luan and had this dumbfounded little boy sit on it together. They headed towards Jiang Hong's private residence. When they arrived at Jiang Hong's residence, the large courtyard door was tightly locked. Arbor and Emolien brought Zohuan in through the back door. Under Zohuan's guidance, they directly went to the woodshed in the backyard. That woodshed door had 2 defensive restrictions added, but in Arbor's view, it was completely useless. Emolien stepped forward and struck out a spiritual fire, immediately shaking open the woodshed's restriction. The 3 of them kicked open the woodshed door and saw 6 or 7 young people around the age of 20 sitting against the wall. Zohuan. Chapter 2272. One of them involuntarily cried out in alarm when he saw the person who barged into the woodshed. Quickly get up and follow. Zohuan, you're here to save us. Another person said agitatedly. These two are. Aya, don't ask so many questions first. Let's leave this place first. Someone's coming, Arbor said with a frown. The young man at the front named Zhou Huan involuntarily shuddered and took a step back. There are more than a dozen guards and retainers in this residence. Arbor glanced askance at that person. Aren't you talisman practitioners? Why do all of you look like cowards? That woman took away all the protective talismans on us. At the mention of this, the group of young men couldn't help but feel indignant. They were all tricked into making talismans for that woman. Every talisman they made was plundered by that greedy woman, Jiang Hong, and sold to talisman shops. You have so many level 13 and level 14 mystic cultivators. But why are you all like weak chickens without any resistance? Arbor swept them a glance. The young man who spoke first couldn't help but say indignantly, Who's a weak chicken? It's just that the enemy is strong and we're weak. The other party is a level 3 spiritual cultivator. So how can we be their match? Don't deny it when I say you're weak chickens. Arbor glanced at them irritably and said to Zhou Huan, If these little brothers of yours are all like this, then don't follow me. Sorry, her money didn't come from the wind, and she didn't raise weak-willed good-for-nothings. After saying that, she held Emolien's hand and walked out the door without looking back. Those young men couldn't help but feel a bit angry. They looked up at Zhou Huan and asked, Who is she, Zhou Huan? Aya Qihua, don't say any more. Zhou Huan rushed out the door with her group of companions and saw more than a dozen guards surrounding them, shouting to kill. It doesn't matter if your cultivation isn't good. Remember that you're talisman practitioners, Arbor said coldly. The greatest effect of talisman practitioners is to use talismans to win and kill enemies. I have to make sure that I have talismans that I can use and draw at all times. If your hand speed isn't good, then practice. Don't dawdle all day long. You can't even draw a single talisman in an hour. Arbor narrowed his cold eyes and stared at the dozen or so servants rushing over. She waved her hand, and a dozen or so paper charms floated out. They looked like a butterfly with wings, and approached the group of servants with whooshing sounds. All the talismans were activated at the same time. Streams of light poured out from the talismans and rushed to the front of the group of servants. Immediately, they turned into circles of 8 trigrams and bound everyone. The circles of 8 trigrams talismans were like a spider web, tightly controlling each and every one of the servants within. Group bind. Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the others widened their eyes and stared at the great talisman master in front of them in disbelief. Was this really a binding talisman? How could the binding talisman be so powerful? Talisman masters aren't static. They can master all talismans through a comprehensive study. While immobilizing, you can also bind, stun, or do something else. Do you think a talisman can only be used for one purpose? Mine is a 8 trigrams binding talisman that combines the effects of immobilizing and binding. Arbor still felt that it wasn't enough to shock people. She said coldly, No one taught me to draw like this. It's just that after drawing more and more, you'll know that everything is possible. This kind of mixed talisman was indeed something that she accidentally comprehended. Chapter 2273. Moreover, drawing mixed talismans on talisman paper was easy to fail. Because the material of the talisman paper was too light and thin, it could not bear the power of 2 kinds of talismans. Therefore, she was so eager to ask Emolian to get her 10,000 blank jade talismans. The talisman power in the jade talisman was naturally not the same as that of the talisman paper. The 8 trigrams binding talisman used by Arbor now was a combination of the effects of fixing and binding. It could be said to be the first talisman to transform it into the shape of the 8 trigrams. Qi Hua's face was full of excitement, his eyes fixed on the field, unable to turn away. Zhou Huan on the side was even more excited than him. She clenched her fists tightly and couldn't restrain the trembling of her body. There was a feeling of finding an organization in an instant. How to break it? In the past, it was not easy for him to find a basic talisman book when he fumbled about making talismans alone. It was very difficult for a talisman master like them, who did not belong to a talisman family, to learn and live. Talisman masters were passed down by word of mouth and passed down from generation to generation. Zhou father was also a talisman master, so she could learn a little from her father's generation. The difficulty of becoming a talisman master like Qi Hua and the others could be imagined. The little girl was too powerful. All the talisman masters present thought so in their hearts, and it was difficult to hide their excitement. If you want to learn from me, at least you must first learn to be tenacious and never shrink back, Arbor said coldly, and her eyes fell on Zhou and the others. What are you waiting for? Go up and fight. Okay. Zhou was the first to react. She rolled up her sleeves and rushed forward. Regardless of the weapon, she directly picked up a black brick from the side and smashed it on the head of a bound servant. Arbor's expression was slightly relaxed. If these guys didn't even have the courage to fight back against the people she had bound, then there was no need to follow her. This young man had no blood at all. What could he do with such a coward? I let you guys lock us up and bully us. I let you rob our talismans to sell. I let you help the evildoers. I'll beat you to death. 8 talisman masters swarmed up and beat more than a dozen servants until their heads were full of blood. One by one, they lay on the ground on the verge of death. Their bodies were still covered by the 8 trigrams binding talismans. It was as if their bodies were covered by the 8 trigrams diagram. They couldn't move at all. All they could do was worry helplessly. They couldn't even open their eyes. Arbor glanced at the crowd and flicked his hand, removing the 8 trigrams binding talismans from their bodies. The leading servant let out a loud roar and summoned a long sword from his conscience, accompanied by a tiger's roar. 1 man and 1 Xian beast charged towards Arbor, biting and slashing with all their might. Arbor didn't even look at them. He just said to the youths present, "Talisman masters don't need you to waste your energy fighting with others. As long as the right talisman was used at the right time, it would be fine. You can easily win. I don't understand what you people are thinking. 6 or 7 symbol masters have actually been bullied to this extent." As he spoke, a talisman appeared in front of Arbor. Defense talisman. Open. The big tiger that had rushed over crashed heavily into her defensive talisman circle with a loud bang. It howled and shook its big head. Arbor instantly applied a layer of Vajra talisman on his hand and stretched out an arm from the defensive talisman circle. A heavy punch landed on the big tiger's left eye that was close at hand. Ah! The stupid tiger let out a mournful roar. Chapter 2274. To everyone's annoyance, the tiger's head tilted back and drooled from the little fellow's punch, that string of drool drifted out with the wind. Huzi's expression was also very coquettish, and its furry face twisted. Everyone watched as the stupid tiger was punched out by the ferocious little girl. That was not the end of it. Everyone discovered with lingering fear. That tiger was punched out by the little girl, right? Unexpectedly, the little girl released an absorption talisman, and the force sucked the stupid tiger back to the defensive talisman circle. Another punch landed heavily on the stupid tiger's other eye. The same expression, the same drool, the same movement, and the same speed. Everyone felt as if the scene just now was replayed, and they watched as the little girl punched the tiger in the eye and punched it out again. Everyone silently lit a candle for the stupid tiger in their hearts and mourned in unison. "Big brother, rest in peace." Woo 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 woo. Huzi squirmed with the tiger's head and quickly fled the scene with its tail between its legs, not even caring about its owner. Everyone, are you still a fucking tiger? You're not even as good as a cat. A talisman master only needs to draw talismans fast, cast talismans fast, have a flexible mind, and change talismans fast. You can easily defeat the opponent in seconds. Arbor expressionlessly sent the leader of the guards who rushed in front of her with a sword flying. Of course, you don't have many types of talismans in your heads, so you won't know how to change talismans in battle. You just need to study hard in the future. Arbor used an 8 trigrams binding talisman on him again, causing him to fly out and crash into a tree in the backyard. He was completely confined to the tree, and his neck and mouth were crooked, unable to move at all. A talisman master should be an elegant profession. Xiao Mu withdrew the defensive barrier around her and glanced indifferently at the dumbfounded Zhou Huan and company. You can turn a city into ashes with a snap of your fingers, kill one person in 10 steps while joking, and kill 100 people in 100 steps. Isn't that right? If you want to learn from me, you have to listen to me in the future. If you can't bear the hardships and fatigue, you can get out now. Eldest Miss. Zhou Huan was the first to kneel on one knee in agitation. He cupped his hands towards the heavenly Tao and said, Zhou Huan is willing to follow Eldest Miss. Qi Hua is also willing to follow Eldest Miss to death. Fang Wenyao. Fang Wendong. Follow Eldest Miss. Arbor looked at them expressionlessly and nodded. Oh, if you want to follow me, everyone has to follow my rules. I only have one rule. Since we're teammates, we have to support each other in the future. Remember, don't stab each other in the back. I don't think any of you want to experience the way I treat traitors. Arbor said coldly. His voice was cold. Yes. We will follow Eldest Miss's orders. Arbor glanced at them and said, All right, get up. Go and tidy up the things in this private residence. Take away all the valuable things. Consider this your first bucket of gold in life. Don't be so stupid in the future. Don't count your money after being sold. You can't even protect your own talisman. Yes. Emolien's lips curved slightly. He stood behind Jojo and looked at her, his eyes full of pampering. The little fellow turned around and bounced to his side, muttering unhappily. I took a bath for nothing. It's hot again. Chapter 2275. Emolien could not help but laugh out loud. He hugged his little wife and whispered in her ear. It's all right. I'll wash it for you when we get back. A guy with evil intentions but no guts. Xiaomu cast him a glance before proudly lifting her small chin. Then come. If you don't come, you're a puppy. Emolien was speechless. The little fellow was getting naughtier. She would tease him from time to time. He almost could not handle it. When I'm done forging your MOMO, we'll return to the divine continent immediately. Arbor wanted to laugh, but she said expressionlessly, Yes. Then you might as well go to Fish Orchid Planet to forge. Find a secluded place, and don't disturb the senior sister's cultivation. Emolien was stunned and then laughed. That's right. In that case, I don't need to be in such a hurry. I can also study it carefully, and see if I can improve the quality of this heavenly fire secret silver first. Who knows, we might be able to forge it into an 8th grade fire spirit before embedding it. The difference of one grade was thousands of miles. The little fellow's eyes lit up. All right, you go forge. I'll go back to Shuntian Prefecture. We'll split up. Emolien replied with a MHM. Don't forget to inform the Dunstock side. After the group finished ransacking Jiang Hong's house, they returned to their own little house. The sky was almost bright. Arbor let Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the rest for 4 hours. She had just settled them down when there was a series of knocks on the door. She opened the door and saw Dun Zhong leaning against the door. He wiped his sweat and panted. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Do you need to use the 800 miles express communication jade talisman to call nonstop? As he spoke, he walked into the court mindlessly. Is there tea? I'm dying of thirst. Arbor raised her little fist and gestured behind his head. He didn't know why, but when he saw that Gung Pingcheng's face, he wanted to beat him up. Emolien couldn't help but laugh, and pull down her little hand. She turned around and glanced at Guan Zhaotang, who had followed her timidly. The moment his gaze fell on the door, he saw a black shadow flash from the corner of the wall. Emolien retracted his awe-inspiring gaze, and revealed a mocking sneer. Arbor kicked the door open, took her husband's hand, and strode towards the stone table. You'll be in charge of the care hall from now on. Arbor glared at Dun Zeng, when he saw Dun Zeng grabbing the kettle and drinking several cups of tea. Did you hear that? I heard it. Dun Zhulian nodded repeatedly, and approached the two with a grin. Little master, then do I have to stay here for a while to sort out the affairs of an prefecture? Of course. Arbor rolled his eyes at him. We're leaving for Shuntian Prefecture in the afternoon. When we pick up the little yellow crane, we'll set off for the divine continent. Ah, so fast, Dun Zeng said with a frown. Little master, are you going to be a hands-off shopkeeper? Arbor snorted and patted Dun Zeng's shoulder hard. She turned to look at Emolien and called, "Husband." Emolien couldn't help but laugh. He knew that the little fellow didn't have the patience to talk to Dunju anymore. So he beckoned to Dunju. "Come here, I have a few instructions for you. Keep this storage talisman well." Emolien handed him a blue talisman. "You'll stay here in the future and look after the affairs of the 6 prefectures. All of you leave." Chapter 2276. Dunja's face fell. "Are peony little Taiswei and Shurchin all leaving?" Emolien nodded and patted him on the shoulder. "Thank you for your hard work. If I see a more suitable body in the Divine Land, I'll keep an eye out for you." Really? Dunja's face lit up with excitement. "Of course." Emolien nodded. "I'll leave the 6 prefectures' affairs to you. Although Guanzhaotang is under Jojo's control now, there are many things. You still can't trust him too much. There's an antidote for Guanzhaotang in the storage talisman I gave you. Just give him one every Lunar New Year. Keep him under your control, and use him for you." Emolien looked at him deeply. "Do you understand?" Yes, I understand." Dunja nodded. "Select the elite disciples and train them. This matter must continue. Don't slack off." Okay. I'll train the Shentian guards well." Emolien gave him a few more instructions, then led him back to Arbor and Guanzhaotang. When Guanzhaotang saw Emolien, he felt a bit fearful and took 2 steps back. "All right, there's nothing else. You can leave." Dunja stood up and cupped his hands. "Then we'll take our leave. Little master, I wish you a safe journey." Arbor nodded and looked coldly at Guanzhaotang. "If I find out that you're disloyal and unwilling to follow Prefectural Lord Gung's management, I'll punish you like this." Suddenly, a huge wave surged out from her palm. With a bang, it smashed a stone block beside the Hall of Caregiving's feet into pieces. The pieces fell to the ground and rolled down. Guanzhaotang's heart skipped a beat. He turned and bowed to Arbor. "I wouldn't dare," he replied, then quickly left with Dunja. Arbor looked coldly at his back. "When Dunja takes over Ani Prefecture, Guanzhaotang won't need to exist anymore," the little guy said coldly. "I'm afraid it's not that easy." Emolien chuckled. "Guanzhaotang isn't a fool. He should be able to understand what you mean and take precautions." "Humph." Arbor held her husband's hand. "I can't be bothered. The 6 prefectures aren't my goal at all. She was going to the Divine Land. What she wanted to flatten was also the Divine Land. I wonder if those people who owe me, who have tried every means to stop me from setting foot on the Divine Land, are ready." Emolien chuckled softly. "I'm guessing that they're ready." He had probably washed his neck clean and was waiting to be slaughtered. "Jojo, go take a shower and rest for a while. I'll ask Little Tree to bring me to Fish Orchid Planet later." On the surface, Arbor nodded his little head, but he didn't let go of his waist. His pair of big eyes looked left and right at him, refusing to let go. The Crown Prince's heart almost melted from her gaze. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead. "Jojo, look, I'm not going anywhere. I'm with you," he said gently. "If you miss me, you'll be able to see me once you reach Fish Orchid Planet." Arbor thought that he was right. She nodded her little head hard and let go of his little hands. "All right, go take a shower. Isn't it hot?" Emolien smiled and rubbed her little head. Then, he hurried her back to her room. After her figure disappeared from his sight, his gentle and elegant expression gradually turned cold. His handsome face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Chapter 2277. Tong. "Yes. Are you ready?" Emolien asked coldly. "Yes. Everything is ready." With a creak, the door of the small mansion was slammed open from the inside by a gust of air. Tong flew out with a group of people, and in a moment, he used arrows and spirit power to force out the people hiding in the corner. After those people appeared, they threw out several talismans under their sleeves. Inchi immediately approached. Emolien stood at the side and watched coldly. Tong rushed forward with a group of black-clothed youths. A large net filled with flickering electric currents appeared in his hands. Each of them held a corner of the net and covered the group of people along with the talismans they had cast, sealing them in the net. After a few bangs, several talismans flew out and exploded beside the talisman caster. A layer of black chi suddenly attacked the bodies of the people in the net, causing them to cry out and fall to the ground. Their bodies were covered in a layer of black cold death chi, and it was obvious that they couldn't live. Mo Lian raised a pair of cold eyes, and coldly stared at the fleeing figure in the distance. With a wave of his hand, Tong led a group of agile youths, and immediately chased after them. Mo Lian waved her hand again to seal the door of the mansion, and then her figure disappeared. When she appeared again, she was already 100 miles away, and her cold gaze fell on the thin black figure that was caught in the net by Tong and the others. "Where do you think you're going?" Mo Lian said coldly, and raised her hand. The net that was wrapped around the person instantly flew up. When the thin man found that the net on his body was gone, he immediately wanted to run away. Unexpectedly, his whole body was controlled by a huge force, and he couldn't move at all, and stiffened on the spot. What are you doing?" he angrily scolded. You're winning with numbers, it's an unfair victory." Mo Lian sneered, and withdrew the huge force on him, and a trace of ridicule appeared on her cold face. "You don't accept it?" "Of course I'm not convinced. You have the advantage in numbers, so it's not a big deal even if you win." The skinny man turned his head. His eyes were squeezed to the side of his nose. The distance between his eyes was very short, making his face look very strange. Mo Lian threw him a cold smile. With a wave of his hand, a mechanical puppet was released by him. With a bang, it fell to the ground, creating a small cloud of dust. "If you beat me, I'll let you go. But if you lose, you have to obediently take us to see your master." The skinny man stared blankly for a moment. Then, he stared at the golem that had suddenly appeared with all his might. He muttered something under his breath, and a rune appeared between his fingers. He immediately threw it out. Bang! 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 A few Xianin talismans cracked beside the golem at the same time. However, the tragedy was that the Xianin talisman was completely useless against the golem. The golem was 3 times the size of the skinny man. With a stomp of its foot, a shallow pit appeared on the ground. Although the golem was tall, its agility was shocking. It leapt and jumped, and occasionally turned around to give a roundhouse kick. It heavily kicked the skinny man's stomach, and sent him flying. Bang! The strange-looking man clutched the wound on his chest, and struggled to stand up. He didn't have any intention to continue fighting, and hurriedly turned around to escape. But just as his body moved, he heard a gust of wind above his head. Chapter 2278. When he raised his eyes to look, his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He saw that mechanical puppet called Number 1 descend from the sky, and swiftly pressed down on his head. If this were to happen, even if he didn't die, he would lose half his life. The skinny man screamed and rolled on the ground to avoid the attack. Bam! The mechanical puppet landed heavily on the ground. When the sun shone on his black wood-carved face, it emitted a cold metallic light. It stretched out its arm and slapped towards his face. The skinny man quivered, and hurriedly rolled one round on the ground. Only this time he wasn't so lucky. The mechanical puppet's speed was actually very fast, and in a leap, it was already in front of him, and lifted its leg to step on his left thigh. He clearly heard a crisp caw sound, and it was so painful that tears came out. Ah! You stop it. Ah! A malicious glint floated in the depths of his eyes, and he abruptly flung out 2 talismans from his sleeves. The talismans flew towards Mo Lian, at an extremely tricky angle. Damn it! As long as he got rid of this man, who was controlling the mechanical puppet, he would definitely be able to turn defeat into victory. Mo Lian coldly watched from the sidelines for a while, and seeing the 2 talismans flying towards him, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Just a little profound talisman, and he dared to display his slight skill in front of an expert. A pitch-black lotus seal appeared in front of him, and with a speed that surpassed the speed of light, it fiercely slapped down the 2 profound talismans. At the same time, a purple flame suddenly appeared and smashed into that person's chest. This flame's power was very terrifying, and it knocked him backwards and rolled twice. His head heavily hit the ground, and with a wah sound, blood spurted out from his mouth. If you don't speak, I will search your soul. Emolien, who had lost his patience, stretched out 5 slender fingers from his sleeves and was about to suck that man into his palm. The skinny man was the first to give in to the pressure and softened. Your Highness, please spare me. I will speak. I will tell you everything I know. Lead the way to your master. After a while, the skinny man pointed at an independent wooden house on the hillside not far away and screamed, It's there. Master's father? The entire house was burned down. Burn it. Emolien sneered and ordered number 1, who was following closely beside her. Let's go and take a look. Golem 1 accepted the order and rushed into the burning hut on the hillside. However, a few minutes later, another earth-shattering sound came from the hillside. The entire house collapsed in the flames. Golem 1 was also covered in flames as he rushed over from the burning hill. He rolled all the way and rubbed himself against the tree bark. Useless thing. Emolien cursed with an icy expression. With a flip of his hand, a black flame shot out, completely absorbing all the flames on the golem's body. At this moment, the metal on the mechanical puppet's face seemed to have been melted by the flames, and there were streaks here and there. Emolien's cold gaze turned from its face to the skinny man who was trembling in fear. You dare to trick me? The skinny man's eyes narrowed and he hurriedly waved his hands and shouted with difficulty. No, no, no. My master, Master Chu really lives here. Hee hee. Emolien waved her hand, and the skinny man flew over uncontrollably, his head landing in her palm. Chapter 2279. No, don't. Every word I said is the truth. I'm not lying. The man in front of him was truly terrifying. How could he dare to hide anything from him? No, don't search my soul. I can tell you everything I know, Your Highness. I, Master Chu, and I have been staying here for almost 7 days. Under my master's instructions, I have been carefully monitoring that Miss Chiao. He really didn't know whether this terrifying young master had known from the start that they were following him, or if he only found out now. Thinking about it, it was impossible for him to find out now. The small and skinny man shook his head in panic. I also know some things about Master. When Master was at Shentian Prefecture, he schemed against that Miss Chiao. Emolien raised her brows slightly, indicating for him to continue. The small and skinny man hurriedly revealed everything he knew. Before the academy competition, Master found a few students from Hippo Academy and poisoned them with forbidden curses. Originally, he wanted them to kill Miss Chiao during the competition, but who would have thought that they would be saved instead? After that, Master sent a few people to investigate the situation, but none of them returned. So Master stopped for a long time, until you came to Ani Prefecture. Master then brought me to investigate, and waited for an opportunity to make a move. Your master is from Clear Sky Sect. He didn't expect that even after Clear Sky Sect had been eradicated, there were still remnants of evil that traveled thousands of miles to make trouble for his Jojo. The small and skinny man hurriedly shook his head and said, I don't know Master's specific identity, but everyone calls him Master Chu. His use of poison has reached perfection, and his forbidden talisman arts have already reached the black level perfection stage. Seeing Emolien's expression turn cold, the small and skinny man hurriedly shrieked, I am telling the truth. I really don't know Master's identity. I am just a little apprentice that's learning from him. Look, I'm not even that skilled in using talismans. Emolien sneered at him. One, kill him. After the order was given, the skinny man immediately realized that his neck had fallen into the golem's icy hand. He wanted to beg for mercy again, but the cold hand didn't give him the chance. Crack! His neck was broken by someone. Emolien's cold gaze fell on the golem. She reached out and put it away without saying a word. Tong raised his head to look at the crown prince, who was shrouded in a layer of pressure. He knelt on one knee and lowered his head. This subordinate was incompetent, and actually let that Master Chu escape. A black lotus flower ignited in Emolien's hand, and with a flick of his finger, that lotus-shaped black flame burned the petite man's corpse cleanly without leaving behind a trace of flesh or skin. Since someone wants to play, I'll accompany him to the end. What are you doing? What are you doing? A loud voice came from behind Tong's group. Emolian turned her head and looked coldly at the group of guards who were being escorted over. The leader had a square face, and his expression was very serious and old-fashioned. Kneel. Bam. The leader with the square face was kicked to the ground, and one of his knees landed heavily on the ground. What the fuck? The bodyguards beside him were also kicked to the ground one after another, and they started cursing. Chapter 2280. You're the captain of the forest guards, Fang Su? Emolian looked coldly at the person kneeling in front of her. Yes. Fang Su stiffened his neck and answered in a low voice. You're not convinced? Emolian glanced at him and waved her hand, releasing the two black-clothed youths holding him down. I'm not convinced, Fang Su said angrily and struggled to stand up. This subordinate is here on the Emperor's orders to ask your highness to return. Kneel. Tong kicked him again, but was stopped by Emolian. Who is this prince? Fang Su froze, then stiffened his neck and said, You're the Emperor's son, the crown prince of the divine province personally conferred by His Majesty. Who are you? This subordinate is the captain of the forest guards, Fang Su. A mere captain of the forest guards dares to disrespect your superior. Drag him away and give him 30 lashes before you talk. Two black-clothed youths walked out from beside Tong and dragged Fang Su away to give him a beating without another word. Fang Su's subordinates immediately wilted when they saw this, shrinking back and not daring to say a word. Their captain had been dragged away by the crown prince for a beating, so if they didn't know their limits, they wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being beaten. A moment later, the blockhead who had suffered 30 lashes was dragged back by the two black-clothed youths and thrown in front of Emolian. Do you know why this prince wants to beat you? You don't like me. Tong's mouth twitched. Emolian couldn't help but snicker. Since you don't understand, then drag it on for another 30 lashes. Everyone. After another 30 lashes, even the thick-skinned blockhead felt that he couldn't take it anymore. The two black-clothed youths who beat him were also bad guys. Their subordinates were light as a feather, but when the lashes landed, there was blood under the skin and blood on the buttocks. They were clearly black-clothed goods who used hidden strength. Do you know why this prince wants to beat you now? Fang Su gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. You still don't understand? Then I'll give you another 30 lashes. Everyone! Exclamation point. Your Highness, you're so willful. Please, not everyone is as smart as you. Fang Su, this blockhead. How could he understand your meaning? Cough. A young man dressed in black walked out from Tong's side. He had a pale and handsome face, but his expression was somewhat lazy. He couldn't stand it anymore and said, Your Highness, if you continue beating him like this, even if you beat him 300 times, he might not understand what you mean. His IQ cough compared to yours. There's a huge gap. What a good bootlicker. Everyone applauded in their hearts. The crown prince's cold expression was clearly showing signs of easing up. Third Fu, when did you come back? Today. The lazy youth chuckled and walked to his side. He bowed and said, Your Highness, for such an honest person, it's better for us to get straight to the point so that he can understand. Fang Su straightened his neck and said loudly, His Highness the Crown Prince does not want to see Fang Su. The lazy young man couldn't help but raise his hand to support his forehead, and he glanced at Fang Su and said, Wrong, wrong, all wrong. It's not that His Highness doesn't like you. He doesn't like your master. Fang Su was stunned, and a trace of bewilderment appeared on his old-fashioned face. Big. Emperor? That's right. His Highness just doesn't like Emperor. You rascal. If you had changed the words I'm an eyesore to I'm an eyesore, His Highness might have been in a better mood and not hit you. Chapter 2281. You don't like the Emperor? Fang Su's mouth dropped open in shock. Even the Lu Lin guards behind him couldn't bear to look at his foolish expression. Fang Su. Emolian raised his hand, and the two black-clothed youths who had been pressing down on Fang Su's shoulders retracted their hands and released him. Fang Su hurriedly lowered his head and asked in a deep voice, Fang Su is only here on orders and can't invite your Highness back. Fang Su can only return to report to the Emperor and ask the Emperor to send. Shut up. A cold light flashed through Emolian's eyes. Fu San suddenly pressed down his raised hand. Your Highness. Fu San shook his head at him, stopping his sudden murderous intent. Mo Lian's expression turned cold as he stopped his hand and casually swept a glance over Fang Su. Go back and tell your master that this crown prince will return within 10 days. Fang Su's stern and old-fashioned face suddenly revealed a trace of pleasant surprise. He even suspected that he was going to fail this mission. He didn't expect that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Since the crown prince personally made a promise, then he would naturally do as he said. Fang Su hurriedly bowed his head respectfully. Yes, this subordinate will return to report to His Highness. Also, tell him to bring back all those random women that were stuffed into the Eastern Palace. Let them go back to wherever they came from. Otherwise, this crown prince doesn't mind adding a few corpses to the civil and military officials' houses to celebrate. Fang Su. His Highness the Crown Prince actually knew? Looking at His Highness the Crown Prince's appearance, he seemed to dislike those women in the Eastern Palace. Kiki was one of those women. It was specially selected by Madame Goen. Don't wait until the situation is out of control before you regret it. Mo Lian glared at Fang Su warningly. This crown prince will leave my words here today. If you return and find that there is a random woman in my Eastern Palace, kill one. If there are two, kill a pair. His expression was cold as he said. If you don't bring them back first, then wait to collect their corpses. Also, tell that old woman from Goen to stop. If I find out what kind of trouble she's up to again, don't blame me for not leaving her any face. Don't think that this old man can protect her. If I were to go crazy, even I would be afraid. Scram. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Mo Lian's cold voice turned into an explosive shout. A gust of wind landed on Fang Su's body, instantly pushing him back a few steps. The group of Greenwood guards retreated in silence, not daring to provoke this temperamental crown prince again. This crown prince looked really scary. What should he do? Mo Lian bent his long fingers slightly and turned around to see Fu San shaking his head at him. Only then did he manage to suppress his murderous intent. Damned old man. Mo Lian coldly cursed. When he returned, if they still let his wife be wronged, he would kill them all for peace and quiet. Third Fu couldn't help but sigh. He knew that the knot between this fellow and his father was difficult to untie, so he could only change the topic. Your Highness, then should we immediately pack up and leave? Mo Lian nodded. You all go back first. At the same time, Miss Chiao, who had washed up and smelled good, laid back down on the bed. She hugged the quilt and rolled over, happily catching up on sleep. A night of torment had been very tiring. Jojo had planned to have a good sleep first, but the moment she closed her eyes, the entire golden talisman jade tome turned into rays of golden light, flashing in front of her eyes. Chapter 2282. What was this golden talisman jade tome up to again? It suddenly became excited and shook her so much that she felt dizzy. Arbor wanted to sit up, but she found that she couldn't even lift a finger. The golden talisman jade tome was up to something again. Arbor helplessly lay on the bed and used a wisp of her spiritual sense to control her spiritual sense to enter the depths of her conscious to investigate. She saw that one of the 12 jade slips flew out and transformed into a large golden book that was overflowing with light. Miss Chiao's heart stirred, and she rushed forward with a cheer. She originally thought that the golden talisman jade tome had advanced her level again, and she could now learn earth-grade talismans that unexpectedly. The jade slip that flew out was still the original 8th one. Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes inwardly. She had already browsed through this 8th jade slip several times from beginning to end and memorized every single word. Why was it still flying out and forcing her to flip through it? Could it be that after her proficiency in talismans increased, she unlocked some hidden talismans to learn? Arbor suspiciously controlled her spiritual sense and made it climb onto the book to examine it. This little spiritual sense body was about 7 inches tall. It stood on the book with its hands on its hips and stomped back and forth in a circle. Suddenly, it flicked its finger, and a series of trembling golden characters leaped into the air before her eyes, forming 3 large characters. Flying talisman. Black-grade talisman, flying talisman. Effect, assists in flight. Duration 1 hour. There was even a series of small characters below. The flying talisman is the only type of black-grade talisman that doesn't require mystic energy or spiritual energy to be activated. With the flying talisman in hand, flying is no longer a dream for ordinary people. Do you want to soar in the sky? Do you want to have a pair of invisible wings? Use them to make the flying talisman. Arbor was speechless. She didn't expect the golden talisman jade tome to have such a funny side. Are you sure you're not teasing me with those few lines of words? Arbor controlled her spiritual sense body to sit cross-legged on the golden book. She picked up the gold-beaded talisman pen and drew the flying talisman over and over again. Almost an hour passed. The golden book slowly turned into golden powder and folded back into the shape of a jade slip. Arbor calmly opened her eyes. With a slight movement of her fingers, a flying talisman appeared in her palm. Now that she was a perfected black-grade talisman master, her talisman drawing speed had increased slightly. With a single thought, the little fellow appeared on the fish orchid star. Sensing Mo Lian's location, Miss Qiao's figure flashed, and she immediately appeared beside him. Taking a closer look, the crown prince was sitting in a secluded corner of the beach with his eyes closed. A small bronze cauldron floated in front of him. It floated in the air, guided by an air current. The man's features were exquisite, and his long hair danced in the wind. Even with his eyes closed, his handsomeness could not be concealed. Miss Qiao ran a circle around her husband and reached out to touch the boundary formed by the faint black flames in front of him. His finger was immediately sucked in by a wisp of black fire, touching his slightly cold face. The little fellow retracted her hand, as if she had a guilty conscience. She stole a glance at him. Seeing that he had no reaction, she reached out to support her chin and squatted down in front of him. She stared at him in a daze for a long time through the faint barrier of fire. Was the sacred flame so cold? Miss Qiao blinked her eyes. She simply stuck her head out and crawled into the boundary of fire. When she got close to him, her heart inexplicably fluttered. So beautiful. The little fellow's eyes curved slightly, and she couldn't help but leave a watermark on his thin lips. Chapter 2283. In the future, no matter how busy she was, she would visit him every day and give him a kiss. Miss Qiao made the decision happily. Then, she no longer disturbed him, and quietly disappeared from Fish Orchid Planet. After an unknown amount of time had passed, a small crab emerged from the beach and ran toward where Mo Lian was sitting while brandishing a pair of pincers. However, when it was 10 steps away from the sacred flame, it felt the terrifying heat and was about to turn and run away. There was a soft sizzling sound. This pitiful little crab that didn't have eyes was instantly vaporized by the steam. The fine white sand beneath Mo Lian's feet pushed outwards in layers, before turning into wisps of white smoke and disappearing into the air. The sacred flame was the most young fire in the world. It had always been known to burn all evil and filthy things in the world. As long as the sacred flame did not want to, no living thing could get close to it. When Xiao Mu found her second ant master at the market, she was in the middle of haggling with someone until her face was flushed red. In the end, she bought a card of cloth that looked quite good at a very discounted price. Arbor was speechless. Martial ant, why did you buy so much firewood, rice oil, salt, and cloth? Jojo had all of these. Child, you don't know how expensive firewood is until you're in charge. Let me tell you, we have a lot of people, and your senior sister has 200 people. When we go to the divine continent, where people are eaten without spitting out the bones, if we don't save up first, we might not even have enough money to buy clothes. I've heard about it a long time ago. In the divine prefecture, ordinary goods are extremely expensive. It's said that spirit coins are only low-end currencies. That was something that needed to be circulated with spirit stones. Spirit stones. If everyone had spirit stones, they would have used them for their own cultivation. Why would they use them as currency? Yang Shirong chattered nonstop as she followed the man pushing the cart. Xiaomu followed behind her with her small paws behind her back, imitating her every step of the way. looking at his second martial aunt, who was walking in front of him and chattering nonstop. He felt that the beautiful days of the past seemed to have come back. Yes, yes, yes. Second martial uncle is the most meticulous. That's right. Spiritual stones are not the most high-end currency. Let me tell you. I've heard that some rich people in the divine land will pay immortal stones or crystal cores of spirit beasts above LV14 to buy elixirs, talismans, magic weapons, and other luxuries at sky-high prices. Oh my God, isn't this digging meat? Second martial uncle grumbled. Arbor jumped and followed closely behind second uncle master. Yang Shirong turned around and looked at her with a grin. She quietly reached out to grab her little hand and mumbled, "Second martial aunt wants to save money for your dowry. Think about it. You can buy a batch of materials here at a low price and sell them in Shenzhou. Aren't we rich now?" Arbor's eyebrows slightly curved as he nodded his little head repeatedly. "Second uncle master, as long as you're happy." Eldest miss. When the carriage arrived at the entrance of the mansion, 8 young men rushed out. Yang Shirong subconsciously pulled Arbor's hand and took a step back. "Who are you? Why are you in our house? Come and greet my second martial uncle, Peak Master Yang." Arbor waved at the 8 people. "Disciple Zhou Huan. Qihua. Dat. Greetings to Peak Master Yang," they said in unison. Yang Shirong paced around the young men and nodded with a serious expression. Chapter 2284. So you're saying that these guys are talisman masters? Second uncle master Yang Shirong sized up the 8 lads with a judgmental gaze and nodded. You want to bring them to the divine continent together? But their cultivation is a little low. The lads who were disdained by second uncle master hurriedly said, We will work hard. Yes, we will definitely not disappoint eldest Mississippi, Yang Shirong grunted. But speaking of which, the most important thing for a talisman master is to be able to draw talismans. Since Jojo is willing to take you in, it means that your talisman crafting aptitude should be pretty good. If you assist Jojo well in the future, you will definitely have a bright and prosperous future. Yes. The group of lads nodded excitedly. Uncle Master. Arbor gently tugged at her sleeve. Put these things away first. After eating, we will return to Shuntian Prefecture. Second Uncle Master was really too much. She could clearly put these things into her inner world, but she had to make people transport them all the way back in a carriage. Put. Yang Shirong directed the group of lads to move the things into the house. After closing the door, she beamed with joy and leaned over to her little niece and whispered in her ear. Put these supplies into Taoyuan. Second Uncle Master. Arbor looked at her helplessly. Why would she need these supplies? Couldn't Second Uncle Master keep them for herself? Yang Shirong glanced at her. Don't talk nonsense. Uncle Master bought them for you. Put them away quickly. You still have so many senior sisters to take care of. How can Uncle Master not put in some effort? Arbor waved her hand helplessly and put all the things into Taoyuan's warehouse. She turned to look at Zhou Huan and the rest. What do you want to eat? Zhou Huan and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. Could they eat whatever they wanted to eat? He still wanted to eat red braised pork. He hadn't eaten it for several months. The sesame oil chicken we ate last time was pretty good. Yang Shirong followed behind Arbor and laughed noisily. Also a plate of crispy peanuts, a plate of mapo tofu. Ha, with a pot of viburnum wine. My God. It's simply your Uncle Master's favorite. All right. Arbor said in a low voice. Uncle Master. You've been eating a lot of heavy food lately. How about some light vegetables? I don't eat vegetables. Your martial uncle is not an insect. I must eat it. Unfilial brat. Zhou Huan and the others looked at each other in shock. They could see the astonishment in each other's eyes. When they turned around, they saw Miss Chow poking her head out of the reception pavilion and waving at them. What are you all standing there for? Come in and eat. How about red braised meat? Or don't pig knuckle? Everyone was speechless. Wasn't it too sumptuous? He didn't expect to be able to eat such a sumptuous lunch. Arbor looked at Zhou Huan and the others who were eating and crying silently. How strange. Why was she of the same breed as Qi Xianxian and the others? She was so happy that she cried during her first meal. Second Uncle Master did not know how to drink. After drinking 3 pots in a row, he passed out as expected. Arbor had no choice but to let Sapling move her into Taoyuan. Only then did he say to everyone, "Go out and wait for me." "All right." Arbor closed the door and quickly took a shower and changed into clean clothes. Just as he finished changing, a white thing crawled in through the window. The little white snake flicked its tail and slithered to her side. It raised its little snake head and looked up at her. "Master." Chapter 2285. Master, master, master. Nonsense. Arbor adjusted her belt in annoyance and hung a small purple gold sachet on it. She turned around and hung down her delicate and fair hand, allowing the little snake to jump onto her wrist. "Master, what's wrong with you these 2 days? You have to take 3 baths a day." Because Master had to throw it out of the window every time she took a bath, the little snake felt that it was very busy and was always thrown out. "Master, I won't peek. Can you not throw me out of the window?" Arbor rolled her eyes and opened the door. She stroked the little snake's head. "I'm saving your life." The little snake twisted its body and curled up. The golden crown on its head also drooped very comically, revealing the word Jiao on its forehead. Xiao Mu's fingers involuntarily stroked the summon character on its forehead. The little white snake's cute eyes stared straight at her. It was bubbling with happiness and rolled around her wrist. "Master, master, can you not take a bath? You throw me out every time you take a bath. I'm not happy." Rather than throwing me out of the window, I think it's better that Master doesn't take a bath. Arbor, that she couldn't be bothered to talk to this little stupid snake. If she hadn't obediently thrown it out of the window every time, it wouldn't still be alive right now. Oh no, it would still be alive. It would have been killed by Emolien. Arbor pulled open the door to the room. In the winter afternoon, the sun shone on her, and a faint warm breeze brushed past her face. Her slightly damp long hair was blown back. 8 young people were standing in the courtyard, ready to go. When they turned around, they saw this little girl in plain clothes. She had one hand on the door frame, and the other hand was slightly raised to block the glaring sunlight. It was this scene that was deeply engraved in the hearts of the young people. Many years later, they were already in high positions. When others asked, they wouldn't hesitate to say in unison with a face full of pride. On a cold winter afternoon, in an inconspicuous little courtyard, we made the most correct decision. They would follow their little master to the divine land without hesitation. At this time, these 8 young people did not know that their fates had already quietly undergone an earth-shaking change. Outside Taiji Palace in Sangzhou, Phoenix Emperor City Duanyu, who was draped in a white mink cloak, stood indifferently beside the carriage with his sleeves rolled up. Yuan Zhen was currently directing everyone to move the necessary low tables, refreshments, and other items onto the carriage that was hung with thick curtains. He turned around and quickly walked to Duanyu's side. He saluted and said, "Your Highness, you can board the carriage now. We must reach Fengyuan Gate within 2 hours and meet up with the Crown Prince and the others." Every year, the Zhangzhou Emperor would expend a lot of manpower and resources to prepare for his winter hunt. It took 3 months for the palace to prepare, escort the great emperor out, and finally successfully return to the palace. They would probably stay in the Ice Heaven Snow region for 1.5 months. The Taiji Palace alone had prepared for Prince Chen's trip for half a month, and all the people in the palace had been mobilized. Duanyu tugged at the cloak that had slipped off his shoulders with waning interest. He lightly leaped onto the carriage and squeezed through the thick curtains. "Shadow, Your Highness!" A pitch-black figure silently appeared beside the chariot. Chapter 2286. Harness the wolves, so that they can pull the carriage more steadily. "Yes, Your Highness." Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the 3 black wolves the size of calves bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws. Using these to pull the carriage? Duanyu crawled out of the carriage and reached out to stroke the black, shiny fur of one of the wolves. He said with a grin, "Drive the carriage properly. If you bump into this prince, be careful of your own skin." The 3 drooping wolves shuddered at his words and quickly pulled themselves together in high spirits. Such frightening humans. Your Highness, Yuanjin stammered. Why you're really going to Fengyuan Gate like this? Why not? Duan Yu knitted his brows. Aren't we going to hunt spirit beasts? If you're afraid of even 3 puny wolves, then you might as well stay at home and continue being a prince. Yuan Zhen exchanged glances with the old nanny beside him and sighed. His Highness was going to stir up trouble. Duan Yu sat back down in the carriage, and his icy voice traveled through the thick curtains. Set off. Rumble, rumbled up the carriage's wheels made muffled sounds under the morning sun. Aside from this, there was only the sound of a group of people silently following behind the carriage and stepping on the thick snow. The people around Prince Chun were having a mental breakdown at this time. His Highness was completely stirring up trouble. Who knew if it would cause a panic when they arrived at Fengyuan Gate later? Minor General Arua of the Midgardian Guard reporting. An exuberant voice welcomed the morning light and rang in everyone's ears. Your Highness, Arua will be fully responsible for your Highness's safety during this winter hunt. Stay away from me. The icy cold voice immediately caused the little soldier called Arua to be stunned. The happy expression on his face instantly turned into a blank. You smell of cosmetics, Duan Yu remarked disdainfully. That minor soldier called Arua's expression stiffened, and he hastily raised the sleeve of his black armor to sniff it again and again. Where did this cosmetics smell come from? Don't think that this prince can't do anything to you just because you're left Prime Minister Wu Yong's subordinate. You've taken the opportunity to get close to me again and again. If there's a next time, this prince will take your dog life. Soldier Ara's face fell. He hurriedly followed the carriage and shouted, Your Highness, when did you recognize me? Duan Yu was silent. Arua ran 2 steps after him and hurriedly shouted, Arua doesn't think she's exposed any flaws. Throw it out. Yes, master. Ing appeared beside Wu Ruomei, lifted her up, and threw her out without any explanation. Duan Yu only felt that his ears were much more tranquil, and his mood also improved slightly. He had already recognized this idiot when she disguised herself as a man and followed her father, Wu Yong, outside the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Are you sure you're not here to make a fool of yourself? Wu Ruomei, who had been thrown out, was hanging from the top of the wall. She finally managed to flip herself over and sit on the wall. She hastily waved her hand at Duan Yu's carriage that was leaving in the distance. Your Highness, I really received the order and accepted the mission to protect you. His Highness doesn't need a woman to protect him. So what if I'm a woman? Wu Ruomei flipped down from the top of the wall in anger and chased after the eunuch Xiao Kezi, shouting, If you have the guts, why don't you compete with a woman? Xiao Kezi immediately shrank back behind Yuan Zhen. What a joke. You want him, a weak normal person, to fight with eldest Miss Wu. Chapter 2287. Your Highness, I really have a mission token here. When Wu Ruomei was fishing for something under her robe, she heard a gust of wind. Caught off guard, she was kicked off the wall by Ying again and hung on it. She was so angry that her face flushed red. She pounded the wall and cursed in embarrassment. Don't kick me if you have the guts. Duan Yu's carriage arrived at Fengyuan's Gate in less than half an hour. At this time, the carriages parked by the side had already formed a long line. For this winter hunt, the emperor not only brought a group of favored imperial concubines and princes and grandsons, but also many outstanding young men and women from civil and military officials, aristocratic families, and sections. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong was looking for his troublesome daughter in the crowd. When he looked up and saw Prince Chen's carriage coming over, he quickly dismounted to welcome him. Seeing Prime Minister Wu like this, everyone also hurriedly dismounted and bowed to welcome Prince Chen. Prince Chen, who had just returned, was not to be underestimated. It was not an exaggeration to say that he soared to the sky in a single bound and made people look at him in a new light. For so many years, no one had inherited the Fiend Emperor's bloodline, but he actually inherited it. It had to be said that this prince's luck was truly heaven-defying. Ah! A woman's scream suddenly came from the crowd. It was unknown which family's young miss was frightened by the 3 ferocious hyenas, But she failed to live up to expectations and fainted as soon as she closed her eyes. This caused a bit of chaos among the servants of that family. Some pinched her philtrum, and some gave her medicine. A cold snort came from behind the thick carriage curtain. Songzhou's Li family is known as one of the 3 great patrician families of Phoenix Emperor City. Their daughter was actually frightened by a mystic beast. Truly an eye-opener for this prince. Lo! Shameful laughter involuntarily came from the crowd. A steward of the Li family argued with a flushed face. This naturally isn't it. How could he say that this fainted woman was merely an ordinary concubine's daughter in their family? A concubine's daughter with a bit of beauty like this was usually offered to some aristocratic family as a bed warmer. Naturally, she was not a girl with outstanding talent that the family focused on nurturing. For this winter hunt, His Majesty was the one leading the expedition. The Li family had brought along this beautiful concubine's daughter in order to climb up the social ladder. It would be best if it was a royal relative, but he didn't expect that he would be so unpresentable. Before it set off, it was frightened by Prince Chen's hunting wolf and fainted. This was truly a disgrace to the clan. 4th younger brother. A piercing laugh came from the side. Miss Li is delicate. Why do you have to be so harsh on her? Although this flying wolf is only a low-level Xian beast, it still scared the young lady in the end. The crown prince, the 2nd prince, and the 3rd prince disembarked from their carriages. Beside them was a young man with an elegant and cold appearance. Duan Yu glanced at that person and recognized him as Prince Qing's heir, Rong Qing. Duan Yu also disembarked from the carriage and cupped his hands toward the crown prince without much sincerity. Elder brother, I think that since royal father has decreed for the winter hunt, we should select some people with passable cultivation to accompany us. I have no interest in participating in the hunt with a bunch of repulsive people. If all of you are as weak as this, then this king will return home. Duan Yu's disinterested expression made everyone's mouths twitch. Crown Prince Rongli quickly called out to him. 4th younger brother. His Majesty the Emperor has arrived. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. Noble Consort Duan has arrived. Chapter 2288. Songzhou's great emperor, Rong Yuan, saw his restless 4th son as soon as he got off the carriage. This child was wearing a pure white cloak. He was tall and handsome, like a bamboo tree in the cold wind. He looked at them coldly. He was leaning against a huge flying wolf. His slender fingers twirled the fluffy fur on the flying wolf's head. His peach blossom eyes, which were supposed to be affectionate, were now filled with ruthlessness. He looked at the people in front of him without any warmth. It was as if the clamor in front of him had nothing to do with him. The people standing in front of him were not his brothers and relatives, but a group of fake people. Ah ha ha ha! Awkward laughter came from the crowd. A thin middle-aged man appeared behind Rong Yuan and said with a smile, 4th prince, you must be anxious from waiting. Your Majesty, most of the people should be here. Please give the order to set off. Songzhou's great emperor. That you useless guy, you only know how to change your mind. The great emperor glared at this official. Everyone was whispering to each other in private. And Xinghe was blind. Didn't he see that beside the 4th prince, there were 3 terrifying flying wolves driving the carriage? These big guys mixed in with the horse caravan. Wouldn't the horses be scared to the point that they wouldn't run away? This in Xinghe was used to smoothing things over, and always liked to talk things over. Why aren't you carrying this useless slut away? She'll dirty His Highness's eyes. A red-clothed beauty walked out from Xinghe's side, and arrogantly kicked the Li family's concubine's daughter on the ground. She coldly looked at the palace servants behind her. There was another round of whispers in the crowd. Everyone recognized that this red-clothed beauty with exquisite makeup and a pearl hairpin was the famous high-grade alchemist Xiangchang princess. Although this princess was young, her attainments in alchemy were not small. She was only 20 years old and would soon become a popular yellow-grade alchemist. In their Songzhou, yellow-grade alchemists were not rare. What was rare was such a young quasi-yellow-grade alchemist. Those who could become yellow-grade alchemists were mostly old fellows in their 70s or 80s. However, this Xiangchang region princess had joined the orthodox alchemy sect at a young age. Due to her exceptional talent, she had become the medicine sect's head elder's favorite direct disciple. Her status was definitely not to be underestimated. Rong Yuan waved his hand and signaled for the servants to carry the Li family's young mistress out. The head of the Li family, Li Yuanxian, narrowed his old eyes and took a few steps forward awkwardly. He hurriedly bowed and said, "My daughter has just returned home from the mountains and countryside. She didn't know how to behave properly in front of the palace. I hope your majesty and the concubines will be magnanimous enough to forgive her." "Master Li, don't bring such an unpresentable daughter of a concubine around with you all the time. She's just a little pretty. Patriarch Li, you're quite scheming." The few patriarchs who were not on good terms with Li Yuanxian naturally seized the opportunity to unceremoniously ridicule him. Their words caused the veins on Li Yuanxian's forehead to bulge. "Father." Duan Yu impatiently interrupted everyone's ridicule and expressionlessly said, "I heard that there's a competition every time there's a hunt. If the people who hunt are all weaklings like this, then this subject won't participate. Even if I win, it's an unfair victory." The Emperor of Zhangzhou's eyelids twitched. His son was his son, but his temper was unknown who he took after. His mother, noble consort Duan, was such a gentle woman. Chapter 2289. Noble consort Duan walked to her son's side and helplessly wiped away the fine white snow at his temples with her sleeve. She gazed at her child with gentle eyes and said softly, "Son, it's fine for you to be cooped up in the palace all the time. Why don't you go out for a walk? Who knows, you might even encounter some interesting things." Duan Yu's icy gaze finally softened. He looked down at his mother and nodded reluctantly. "Then I won't compete with them." Okay, as you wish." Her Majesty the Empress, who was dressed in a formal robe trimmed with black brocade, had a glint in her eyes when she heard this. She stroked her face with her sleeve and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, look, the fourth prince has already spoken. No matter what, you have to choose some young talents for him. When we reach the ice heavens and snow region, they must accompany the fourth prince to have some fun. The crown prince's health has been weak these past few days. Otherwise, he could accompany his younger brother to hunt." The second and third princes silently followed behind Crown Prince Rongli, but their eyelids twitched tightly. "Please." Old Fourth had a sacred beast, the seven-tailed heavenly fox, by his side. Who freaking wanted to play with him? Whoever dared to compete with him would definitely be dealt a heavy blow. Only those who were unlucky would play with him. Zhangzhou's emperor muttered to himself for a moment before turning his gaze to his second and third sons, who had their heads bowed. "Old second, old third. Ah, royal father? Wai Weichen's waist hasn't been well recently." The second prince hastily stammered. "Wai Weichen's eye disease has flared up, royal father." Zhangzhou's emperor was amused by his two cowardly sons. One's waist isn't well, and the other's legs aren't well. Then stay in Phoenix Emperor City and don't go hunting. The second and third princes looked at each other in dismay. Fuck, how could they not go? The list of names for the winter hunt each time represented royal father's favor. Which of the people who could go with the emperor to the winter hunt weren't young patrician sons or royal relatives favored by the emperor? "Your Majesty, this humble subject is here." Prince Qing's heir, who was called, leaped off his horse and bowed to the emperor. "Do you have the confidence to compete with our son? Your Majesty's orders. This humble subject does not dare to refuse." The great emperor looked at his young and outstanding nephew, and his mood improved slightly. He laughed and said, "Ollie, when you go to the heavenly ice and snow region, you will have opponents. Qing's hunting skills will definitely broaden your horizons." Duan Yu leisurely glanced at the silent vassal Prince Rong, who was standing solemnly with his head bowed. Then he lifted the curtain and leaped into the carriage. "Let's set off." The great emperor looked helplessly at his son's carriage and raised his hand. "Let's go." "Aya, His Majesty seems to favor the fourth prince a lot." "Nonsense. That is the Rong family's only glory in the last 1,000 years. They inherited the demon emperor's bloodline. Speaking of which, after receiving the devil emperor's inheritance, will my cultivation soar by leaps and bounds? I wonder what cultivation level this fourth highness is at now. I think it's better not to ask." If you ask, you'll suffer a blow for no reason. Previously, in our Phoenix Emperor city, the crown prince was knowledgeable and elegant. Although he couldn't compare to Prince Qing's heir, who was proficient in both the pen and the sword, he was still an elegant young master. But now, his limelight has been completely overshadowed by this fourth brother of his. Eldest brother, don't listen to those gossips. The second prince frowned and swept his gaze behind him. Because there were so many people, they didn't know who was speaking, but some fragmented words drifted into their ears. Chapter 2290. Although Rongli didn't say anything on the surface, his hands were tightly gripping the reins. A vein popped out on the back of his hand. Ever since his fourth brother returned home, he felt that his position in front of his imperial father had plummeted. In his imperial father's words, it seemed that he only cared about his fourth brother. How much was he, the crown prince, being squeezed to? How hateful! Looking at that arrogant and domineering young and handsome face, he really wanted to destroy it with his own hands. The caravan headed towards the ferry. When they arrived at the ferry, they would change boats and head straight for the extremely cold ice heaven snow region. This journey would take about 10 to 15 days. Crown Prince Rongli tightly gripped the reins and suppressed his gloomy mood. Underworld Province, Great Yong City Imperial Palace. Ahahaha. Your Highness. A few personal palace servants looked at the black-clothed man standing in the open main hall, laughing maniacally with a distorted face. They couldn't bear to look at him, and shrank to the side. His Highness the Crown Prince wouldn't be crazy, right? Ha 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 ha. Underworld Wolf Prince laughed until tears were about to fall. Look, Mr. Zhuang, you heard it today. Ha 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 ha. My good imperial father actually personally asked me to give up the position of Crown Prince. Give it to my good third brother. Ha 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 ha. I knew it. Nothing good would come out of bringing him back. Underworld Wolf Prince gritted his teeth and cursed. Ha 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 ha. Look, this is my father, my most revered father. For the son of a favored concubine, he wants to abolish me. Ha 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 ha. Crown Prince, your Highness, please calm down. The old man in his early 50s that Underworld Wolf Prince called Mr. Zhuang stroked his beard and sighed. The imperial noble consort is deeply favored by the emperor. This is an unchangeable fact. Mr. Zhuang said. The top priority is to unite the civil and military officials and suppress this matter. We will think of a countermeasure to deal with it. And then? Suppress it, and then what? Won't you still have to give up the position? Ha ha ha. Underworld Wolf Prince's face was full of despair as he slumped into the armchair. Teacher, the situation is gone. It can't be salvaged. No, this matter can be salvaged. Mr. Zhuang calmly analyzed. What His Highness has done in the past 3 years is obvious to all in and out of the court. Your Highness, you can't give up so easily. Listen to this old subject. You only need to do one thing during this period of time, and that is to visit all the court officials. Is it useful? Your Highness, if you don't do it, you'll have nothing. If you try your best, you might be able to turn the tide. The Underworld Wolf Crown Prince slumped on the stool without spirit. Suddenly, he covered his face and wept bitterly. Father said that third brother is very outstanding. Whether it is intelligence, strategy, or even cultivation, third brother is the most outstanding among all his sons. So what? Mr. Zhuang flung his sleeves and said, how can we allow him to occupy the position of Crown Prince without a proper title? Your Highness, pull yourself together. You are the legitimate son of the late Empress. For the past 3 years, you have been helping the great Emperor deal with government affairs. You have been doing an excellent job. Yes. The Underworld Wolf Crown Prince propped himself up and clenched his fists tightly as he angrily said, I am the most legitimate Crown Prince. That son of a favored concubine. How can he compete with me? I won't lose. I won't lose. Your Highness. Your Highness. The Crown Princess' voice came from outside the door. Chapter 2291. Fuer, why are you here? Underworld Wolf Crown Prince hastily stood up and opened the door to welcome his pot-bellied wife in. Fuer, your body is heavy, so don't walk around in the cold of the night. Your Highness, I'm worried about you. Su Fu pulled her husband's hand and sat down at the table together. I know about what happened in the Imperial study this afternoon. Your Highness, you mustn't misunderstand. As long as we're here, we'll have Qingshan. Before you do anything, think about Fu-Er and our unborn child. Yes. Underworld Wolf Crown Prince held his wife's shoulders and nodded. Fu-Er, don't worry. I won't fall so easily. Sir Zhuang nodded, gratified. This old official will contact some people. For the next few days, Your Highness and Her Highness the Crown Princess can stay in Qingyuan Hall. Thank you for your trouble, Sir Zhuang. I await your good news. Sir Zhuang nodded. Just as he walked out of Qingyuan Hall's door, someone pressed a shiny dagger against his neck. His old face turned pale as he retreated step by step into the hall. Good news? What good news do you think there can be? A cold voice sounded in Underworld Wolf Crown Prince's ears. It shuttled back and forth in the empty hall. The palace maids and eunuchs guarding the door had long since knelt down, trembling in fear. Their heads were pressed against the back of their hands, and they didn't dare to move a single hair. Underworld Wolf, I originally didn't want to bicker with you. Unfortunately, you don't know how to be tactful, and don't know when to advance or retreat. Outside the tall hall door, a slender figure crossed the threshold and coldly gazed at Sir Zhuang, who had a dagger against his neck. Third Prince Yu? What are you doing? Sir Zhuang felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to reason clearly. He was now a fish on the chopping board. Although he forced himself to be calm, it was inevitable that he was panicking. The pitiful Sir Zhuang had an eloquent tongue, but he couldn't say anything in this situation. Eldest brother. Ahan moved a stool from the side and let Aci sit down. Akir crossed her arms and glanced at Nether Wolf Crown Prince and his wife. She sneered. You don't know how to appreciate favors. My big brother Yas didn't even want to be long-winded with you. Who would have thought that you would actually dare to secretly scheme behind his back and try to salvage the situation? Turning the tide, Yas replied nonchalantly. Yes, you still want to turn the tide. Akir snorted and said, I don't even know where you got the guts to trouble my big brother Yas to personally deal with you. All right, don't waste your breath on him. Read the Imperial Edict. Yes. An old eunuch shakily walked out from behind Yas, spread out the Imperial Edict and read aloud. Crown Prince Hell Wolf is close to evil officials, not benevolent and righteous, far from a gentleman, close to a villain, immoral and immoral. With every sentence the old eunuch said, Nether Wolf's face sank deeper into a deathly gray. The Crown Princess was trembling at the side. Mr. Zhuang was so angry that his whole body trembled like a sieve. He shouted angrily, Slander, this is slander. You guys! How dare he falsify the Imperial Edict? Framing His Highness the Crown Prince. Only dethroning the Crown Prince. Aci coldly said. Tomorrow at the Imperial Court, Imperial Father will officially crown me as the Crown Prince. Nether Wolf Crown Prince spat out a mouthful of blood that he had suppressed in his heart. Aci coldly glanced at him and indifferently said, Eldest brother, you should take care of your body. Chapter 2292. You. Sir Zhuang pointed at Ming Yasi with trembling fingers. You guys, how can the dethroned Crown Prince be so trifling? When the news spread to Divine Prefecture in Song Province, the two monarchs laughed their heads off. Ming Yasi curled his lips and smiled coldly at the master and servant trio. So it's trifling. Dethroned Crown Prince. I advise you to properly recuperate in Qingyuan Palace Hall and not run around. Otherwise, you might not even know how you lost your life. Underworld Wolf Crown Prince sat paralyzed on the ground and didn't regain his senses for a long time. Imperial Father In the afternoon he spoke to him in a negotiating tone. Underworld Wolf, you're not suitable for the position of Crown Prince. Why don't you abdicate and give it to your third brother? What do you think? He didn't expect that after only 4 hours, he would issue an imperial edict to dethrone the Crown Prince. Underworld Wolf Crown Prince's vision was a blur, and he couldn't hear his wife Su Fu's screams. He only felt that his eyes were sticky, and he couldn't see anything clearly. He could faintly hear someone screaming in panic. Quickly find an imperial physician. Find an imperial physician. His Highness the Crown Prince's eyes are bleeding. It's just a dethroned crown prince. Why are you so nervous? Ahan smiled and said with his hands on his hips, Someone, find a physician to examine this dethroned crown prince's condition. Don't pass out all of a sudden. This is a good day for me to ascend to the position of crown prince. I don't want big brother and sister-in-law to die on the spot. Ming Yasi coldly swept his gaze over the dethroned crown prince and his wife, and his gaze fell on Sir Zhuang. Big brother, how should we deal with this old man? Kill him. Ming Yasi sneered, and turned to walk out of the palace hall. He couldn't keep an old man by his side, who could give advice to the dethroned crown prince at any time. Apart from this old man, with the dethroned crown prince's IQ, he would never have the qualifications to make a comeback. A cold glint flitted across Ming Yasi's eyes. He flicked his sleeves and walked out of the palace hall. He raised his head to look at the silhouettes of the palace buildings illuminated by the clear moonlight. Big brother, don't blame me for being ruthless. I originally had no intention of competing with you. However, the position of crown prince was something that I had to obtain. If he didn't have an equal status, if he didn't have the connections, resources, and power that he deserved, what qualifications did he have to compete with that person? Crown Prince Lian of the Divine Land, are you ready? As long as he ascended to the position of Underworld Crown Prince, he was bound to get what he wanted. Ha ha ha. Arbor pulled her furry cloak a little tighter, held the gold-beaded talisman pen, and continued to draw her talismans on the back of the Fire Phoenix. The journey was really boring. The group left in Prefecture. In order to speed up their journey, Arbor summoned the ancient Fire Phoenix to carry them to Shuntian Prefecture. With the fearsome aura emanating from this big fellow along the way, they didn't have to worry about any foolish flying spirit beasts pouncing on them. Zhou Huan and the others vomited bile for the first 2 days. She was a little better these 2 days, but her face was still pale. She was quite pitiful. Arbor didn't feel that little Fire Phoenix was flying at all. She always felt that it was flying very steadily. She didn't understand why Zhou Huan and the others always said that it was very bumpy. It was probably little Phoenix deliberately messing with them. Even if she was unhappy, she still had to carry 8 men? Huohua, get down quickly. Below them was the long-awaited thunderous plain. She wanted to sit on the land whale and play. Ugh! After getting down, Zhou Huan only felt that her steps were light. She swayed to the side, squatted down and vomited. Chapter 2293. The Bloodfire Phoenix curses angrily. Bastard! What are you vomiting for? I won't carry them next time. A group of men who came from the mountains and had never seen the world. He gave them the honor of riding the ancient Fire Phoenix, and they actually dared to vomit at him? Vomit your sister. Arbor holds his forehead and withdraws the swearing Bloodfire Phoenix. He turns to look at the 8 people who are vomiting dizzily. How are you guys? Eldest Miss. Zhou Huan feels like a worm crawling to Eldest Miss's leg and calls out pitifully. He did it on purpose. It's been hard on you. Arbor squats down with a dark expression and touches Zhou Huan's little head. He reaches out and pours out an anti-vomiting pill from the bottle. Take another one. In a while, we will ride the land whale. It will be very stable. Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the others only feel slightly better after taking the medicine. After resting for 5 minutes on the spot, everyone finally stops feeling dizzy and vomiting. They all look pitifully at Arbor. Arbor twitches the corner of his mouth. Huohua is too playful. Don't worry, we will ride Qinghuan later. My Qinghuan has a gentle temperament. It definitely won't be bumpy anymore. Now, let's go find the land whale first. Arbor runs in the direction of the land whale. Quickly follow me. Qi Hua stares blankly and can't help but laugh. These few days, Eldest Miss has been looking old and steady all day. It's really rare to see such a cheerful little girl. Haha. Fong Wenyao and his brother can't help but laugh. Let's go, quickly follow. The group arrives at the landing port of the land whale. Arbor pays the fee with familiarity and leads the 8 talisman masters to board the land whale's back and sit down. The land whale is quite fun. After sitting on it last time, Miss Chiao has been a little longing. Now that she has this opportunity, She might as well sit on it again and play. Tap tap tap. After a series of footsteps, the people who board the land whale come face to face with Arbor. Xiaomu had just felt that these people were a bit familiar. One of the girls in their group could not help but scream. She pointed at Arbor and shrieked, "Why are you here? Miss Qiao, do you still remember us? When we first entered Shuntian Prefecture, we met here at the land whale. Later, during the school tournament, we would meet again. We are students of the Dawn Academy. I am Su Hao." Arbor looked at him blankly for a long time, feeling that the 7 people in front of him were familiar. He nodded his head in confusion. Su Hao couldn't help but smile and touch his nose. Is Miss Qiao alone? Then, what about Qi Xian and the others? Miss Qiao said expressionlessly. He went into seclusion to cultivate. Oh. Su Hao nodded and sat down with his people behind Xiaomu and the others. The things in this small town are cheap. We actually came here to make a big purchase. Su Hao smiled and scratched his head. Su Hao, why are you telling her so much? The young lady who had previously pointed at Xiaomu and shrieked impatiently with a stoic face. Aya, we all know each other. It's not too much to say a few words. Chen Yuhan, you little slut, shut up. Su Hao sighed. Stop arguing. Alright, the land whale is starting. Arbor only felt that these people were too noisy and automatically blocked their voices. He looked up at the thunderous plain and saw lightning bolts striking down. The land whale passed through smoothly, avoiding the lightning bolts at a fast speed. Hey, you, let me ask you. This land whale, are you selling it? The 6th watch ended. Chapter 2294. A big shot who wants to buy a land whale? Everyone's gazes all turned toward Xiaomu. The woman who pointed at Arbor earlier can't help but laugh loudly. You want to buy a land whale? Do you have enough money to buy one? What a joke. The land whale is a 3rd-grade spirit beast. It can effectively avoid lightning and is very fast. How can this big guy be bought so easily? Moreover, my apologies, Mississippi. The old manager is slightly taken aback, then smiles. This land whale is rented by us. It actually belongs to the Shuntian Prefecture's main residence. Feeding the land whales every day is also very expensive. It's called a land whale. Can't it go into the water? It can. The old manager smiles again. This land whale is already a 3rd-grade spirit beast. It's not afraid of water. So it's a Shuntian Prefecture's spirit beast. That makes things easier. Arbor takes out a communication jade talisman and writes a message to Dunzong. This land whale is so fun. She's interested. She originally wanted to buy it, but since Dunzong can make the decision, then let him. Pay. Gift. Give it to Sir Jojo. Xiaomu put away the jade messenger talisman and tilted her small head. She didn't say anything else and just closed her eyes to rest. Unexpectedly, he hears the woman's noisy laughter. Yo, didn't you want to buy a land whale? Why aren't you talking? Lu Tiantian, that's enough. I've told you so many times. This isn't Hong Yuan. Don't act like a princess in front of others. All you do is cause trouble for the team. Su Bang, I think you've been bewitched by that little bitch Chen Hanyu. Why don't you try scolding her again? Su Bang reaches out to protect the sobbing Chen Hanyu and angrily glares at the average-looking Lu Tiantian. Arbor glances at them. Suddenly, he has some impression of them. It seems that every time these people get together, there will be a dogfight. Forget it, Sir Jojo won't bicker with you. The little fellow folded her legs and leaned against the back of the chair, closing her eyes to rest. The land whale was running very smoothly, and it didn't feel any bumps at all. Its 8 short legs were running on the thunderous plain without any discomfort. Zhou Huan and the rest were overjoyed. Finally, he didn't have to suffer the pain of being tossed around on the blazing blood phoenix's back. Seeing that eldest Miss had closed her eyes, they didn't say much, and each of them began to draw the binding talismans they had just learned in their minds. The fact that young Miss was willing to teach them was a blessing that they had accumulated over 3 lifetimes. Everyone told themselves in their hearts that they must not disappoint young Miss' expectations of them. Eldest young Miss's expectation for them was that they had to advance to high-grade talisman masters within 3 months. They would work hard. The land whale stopped at the fixed parking spot at the city gate of Julu City. The city lord of Julu City, Hua Qingyu, was dressed in a white robe. He had been waiting at the city gate for a long time. "Greetings, Miss Chiao." Hua Qingyu saw the man in the crowd at a glance. He hurried over and bowed respectfully to Arbor. He still remembered the first time he met this man. He didn't know her identity, but her methods left a deep impression on him. At that time, the beautiful fairy from the Palace of Cold Blood was beaten to death by this savage little girl. "Done. Castle and Gung told you to wait for me here?" "Yes." Watching you bowed again. "The land whale and a year's supply of food have been prepared. Miss Chiao, may I ask if 2 land whales are enough?" Chapter 2295. Arbor nodded. Originally, she just wanted a land whale to play with. However, this city lord Hua was indeed a good person. Sir Jojo was a little happy, and his tense face relaxed a little. "Bring me over to have a look." "Yes." Hua Qingyu made an inviting gesture and brought Arbor to the parking spot on the side. Lu Tiantian and the others were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. How is that possible?" Lu Tiantian said to himself in surprise. "This land whale is a level 3 spiritual beast, and he just sold 2 to her so casually." Su Hao was also a little surprised. However, out of curiosity, the passengers who had just landed from the land whale could not help but follow Hua Qingyu, Arbor, and Zhou Huan to the parking spot. Sure enough, they saw 2 super huge land whales lying lazily on the ground, basking in the sun. "Oh my god, these 2 land whales are super huge. They must have been raised for many years. Such a huge land whale. There must be 50 or 60 people sitting on it. Wow, it's twice the size of a normal land whale." Everyone was talking at once, attracting the attention of the onlookers at the landing point. Everyone excitedly went around to ask what was going on. When they heard that a rich person wanted to buy a land whale, they all opened their mouths in surprise. Fuck, such a huge land whale. It's not convenient to carry around. He's buying 2 at a time. Unless he has a castle at home, how can he put it down? Isn't that so? Hey, how much are you buying this land whale for? Lu Tiantian could not help but frown and ask. "Princess, he's buying a land whale. You don't have to worry about it. He's rich and can do whatever he wants, TSK. Chen Hanyu could not help but mock. "Shut up. I'm not talking to you," Lu Tiantian said angrily. Chen Hanyu rolled her eyes at her, leaned against Su Bang, and said sweetly, "Brother Bang, look at the princess, she's scolding me again." "You should shut up. Don't make a fool of yourself here." Su Bang scolded Lu Tiantian, causing the princess's mediocre face to be filled with anger. Watching you politely bowed to Arbor and said with a smile, "Miss Chiao, please go up and check it. If there is no problem, I will take you to the food." Arbor looked up at the 2 land whales lying on the ground. Even though this enormous land whale was lying there motionless, she felt that it was so magnificent and huge. The little girl stood beside the short elephant leg of the land whale, like a little girl. When she looked up, she could only see the white breath that the land whale exhaled. So, the little girl leaped into the air and landed lightly on the land whale's head. She looked expressionless, but if Emolien was here, she would definitely feel the little girl's excitement. "Little guys, I'll have to trouble you to stay in the storage talisman for half a day." Arbor waved her hand, and 2 purple lights filled her fingertips. 2 thin jade talismans moved along with the airflow. 2 circles of purple light immediately fell on the 2 land whales. And in a short while, the 2 land whales were kept in the 2 purple talismans. After Arbor landed lightly, the light in her hand dimmed slightly, and she held the purple talisman in her hand. Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the others were so excited that their eyeballs almost fell out. They surrounded Xiao Mu with a whoosh and shouted in a stuttering and impassioned voice, "Z! Purple! Supreme Grade Purple! Supreme Grade Purple!" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.